this. I got to start recording now on this one because my process was disrupted and I didn't have it going. So that intro's gone. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're resuming this thing. The hearing is in recess right now. I am absolutely pissed. I will be keeping everybody posted on this just in case. If this happens again, I will have a community guideline strike. I have never once received a warning from YouTube about any content. I've had content demonetized, sure. I have never once received any sort of guideline violation warnings. Even though it says in my email that I've had numerous warnings with no correction, never, ever once. There isn't a way to correct. This happened in the middle of a stream. What warning would I have gotten? I'm looking at my email right now. No warnings. There are no warnings from YouTube on this. I am pissed. If this stream gets taken down, I will live stream either from the Ricada Media channel. Probably the Ricada Media channel will be where I live stream from. So, just as fair warning, if it gets taken down again, it will be back up over there. There was nothing in that stream that in any way violated any YouTube policy. And I'm really, really pissed off that they said that I was somehow scamming or spamming or in a deceptive practice. I actually work really hard to make sure my titles and descriptions accurately portray what's going on. Yeah, Aiden, somebody must have flagged it, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm working with my partner manager already. As soon as I get a response, you guys will know. Let's see. I don't know what's we're in the meeting is in recess right now. So it'll be back. We did miss a couple minutes of it. I'm absolutely pissed. I have no idea the state of any of the chats that came through on the last show. I don't know what happens there. I think they're still there. I think they're all still counted. Because I still have... No, I don't even have the live replay up, although it may take a little bit for it to process. I'm dumbstruck by what that was. Hey, Viva. The exact same thing happened to me during an unlisted test stream with only me watching. It took me days to get the warning removed. Yeah, I'll, oh man, I'm mad right now. I'm really, really mad. Hey, thanks for being here, man, by the way. I appreciate it. Also, I appreciate the shout out you gave me on yesterday's show with Barnes. Thank you, Viva. Guys, make sure, if you're not already subscribed, and how could you not be? You got to make sure you check out Viva Fry on YouTube. Excellent legal commentary. Also, his show with Barnes, legendary live streams every week. So great stuff over there. So that being said, as soon as the Senate hearing comes back, we will be back online. I'm to borrow the meme, literally shaking RN. Literally shaking right now. I am absolutely pissed. And yes, this will be a topic on tonight's live stream as well. I will show the full email that I received from Google. I will show the message that they sent to all of you. I will show any updates that I can get on this process right away. Right away. I do things in the open. I do them transparently and publicly. And there's never any reason I would ever have to do anything different. So, angry. Well, let me catch up on a couple of the other chats that some that have come in during this stream, and the ones I don't know if I have the ones from last stream available. Let me see what I can do. I do have them. I do have them. Even though the stream is currently down, I've got it. All right, G-Man. Let me get through those right away, because I'm gonna lose track of them quickly. G-Man says, my bad on Carter Page. Thanks for the correction. What are these consent decrees? I know about as much as them as Maisie Hirono. A consent decree is where, the long and short is where someone consents with the U.S. government to obey a decree. It's like I want to say it's almost like a settlement agreement, where they agree to abide by conditions with a sort of set idea of a punishment or of a regulatory action that might follow, is a basic way to describe it. So they've been using these consent decrees to have police forces by saying you will meet certain guidelines regarding, unfair, racist policing or something like that. Otherwise, you'll be subject to further regulation by the government. That's the basics of the consent decree. It would take a little bit longer to explain all of it. Jonathan Dolph says, oh no, this senator sounds like a Zuckerberg clone. Run. And Maxim Perkunov says, Garland covered up OKC. Where's John Doe number 2? Where's John Doe number 2? So there you go. Those are the remaining chats from the last stream. Mithran Emrys says, holy shit. So they told you it was a copyright thing, but posted to us that you were a scamming scammer. WTF YouTube. YouTube not following its own TOS again since they said it was reviewed and found you were scamming? How? Yeah, that's a real good question, isn't it? What scam ever? Like, what scam could there possibly be? But again, all of my information that I get from Google will be explained and discussed. I do not fight things in quiet. What is this? Okay. That was something else, sorry. Marsupial Gamer says, I was going to be jokey, but I can tell you're very, very unhappy. Sorry, YouTube is such a feckless C word. Yeah. Very, very, very frustrated right now with this. Similar thing happened to Eric Hunley the other day. Unfortunately for him, his entire channel was deleted, but it's back because they made a mistake. Seems to be a rash of this going around right now. I want to be clear that I have had zero ever warnings or violations of any kind ever from YouTube. Never. Not even close to anything. Polyfrog says, Nick, they do it to me too. I have 2 strikes now. Nate Dog T1998 says, greetings from Australia, aka California. Due to the fact that the latest editions of the San Diego Zoo and Safari Park are Australia themed, It would seem the feds are running out of space to hide the Aussie animals from the public. No, and they don't want to hide the Aussie animals from the public. They want to perpetuate the lie that is Australia. Space Dwarf Brewing says, have some cash for the BS. Hey, thank you, Space Dwarf. Thank you for that. It is very much appreciated. Let's see. Let's go back to these justice chats. Night of Hope says, I like how... Oh, wait, no. He says, this Artard thinks you can't attack a building today to stop a thing that happens in it tomorrow. Did you take your pills today, Grandpa? Holy shit. Yes, that was in regards to his dodge on the Portland issue. Just say it was domestic terrorism. It's really simple. They're firebombing a federal building. Just call it domestic terrorism. That should be the Attorney General's stance on firebombing a federal building, is that it should default to domestic terrorism. That's okay for the Attorney General to default to that stance. Now, it can be proved not to be domestic terrorism, or they could later uncover more information or whatever, but the default, that's an okay one. Anthony James says, will you commit today to drinking a bottle of Fireball? Please answer or Wherex? No. Timothy Reaper says, my name, Nick Ricada. I am a deceptive scammer and spammer in central Minnesota. Wherex says, scam me harder. Here's your scam money for your scam stream 2.0. Suck at YouTube. I'll be using Streamlabs from now on so you don't get any of this BS. Suck yourselves, you commie bastards. Mike, by the way, yes, you can use Streamlabs to donate. Streamlabs donations do not give any cut to YouTube. I do also read all of them unless something really weird happens. Mike DeWine's shit-eating grin says, I hear Liz Fong Jones is a good person to contact for issues like these. Liz will get you set straight. I don't think so. I don't think that's true at all. Something tells me that's not right. No, I have a YouTube partner manager. I've already reached out to them, and I will get to the bottom of this the best I can, and I'll figure out if it was flagging, if this was an error, whatever it was. And as soon as I know, you guys will know. Night of Hope says, Susan, suck my fucking nuts, you communist pig. You helped the CCP round up and murder millions in China. How dare you shit on our civil rights here, you dumb bitch. Fuck you and your entire fucking worthless subhuman company. Eat shit, you're all disgusting. Thank you, Night of Hope. I'm sure that'll go well in my appeal. Kiwi Goes Live says, guys, the pandemic has hit Las Vegas' Pinball Hall of Fame pretty hard, and they need help raising $200,000 to get their new location up and running. Search GoFundMe for Pinball Hall of Fame Las Vegas and help out if you can. I thought that was the beginning of a joke, but if that's real, that's amazing. Undead says, I hope you're investigating legal remedy for this BS. Well, right now I don't have any damages other than a potential mild reputational damage. But you know, we'll see what happens with this. I'd pray for YouTube to run itself into the ground if the alternatives were remotely comparable. Yeah, that is the problem right now. We're held hostage by the fact that the alternatives are suppressed actively by YouTube. I mean, kind of that whole monopoly type thing, but you know. Nothing Raven says, deceptive practices, scams. It was the government talking. Touche. There might have been deceptive practices and scams. The government is talking there. So they're certainly lying. Chris Ames says, Streamlabs cut off Matt Christensen with no warning after taking his money for Prime support. No refund. Jeez. I thought YouTube demonetized Matt Christensen. I didn't realize Streamlabs did. Shade221, I don't actually know the answer to that. Right now, the old super chats from the stream are still showing in my monetization tab, but I won't know until tomorrow if they counted. I don't have a way to see because of how they present them to me, but I assume they're still there. Streamlabs also demonetized Sargon. Yeah, everybody went after Sargon at the same time. Let's see. Diesel Mechanic 88 says, fuck YouTube, communist scum. Night of Hope says, sorry. Yes, I am posting the archive channel in just a second in the chat. I will pin it. I will pin it up. Also, you can find the stream. I will be uploading it to the archive channel. The stream from before that they took down, I'm going to put it up on the archive channel as well. So you can see the stream completely. There was nothing in that stream that was at all controversial at all. The jokes weren't even edgy. It's a daytime stream. Okay, so with that said, as soon as they come back, we will resume the hearing. Mithrin Emrys says, here's a joke about the Pinball Hall of Fame thing. They are currently bouncing around frantically, bumping into obstacles because of COVID. Without that 200,000, they might be looking at a gutter ball or worse yet, tilting. Come on now. Mike Dolan says, look into locals. Hopefully they will get live stream working eventually. Yep, there's a lot of possible alternatives. Angry Baneling, the archive link in the description is correct. So I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, in case you're back or new and you missed it before, yes, there will still be a live stream tonight. Tonight I will be streaming at the normal time, presumably here, but depending on how this goes, I guess it could be on the media channel. But that would only be if something gets shut down here. I don't suspect we will have that problem. But if we do, it will be on the media channel tonight. I've got a list of topics. We just got another one. We just got a new topic, and that was YouTube shutting me down midstream. So. Teleco Friedman, there could have been spicy comments in the live chat. That's not what they sent to me, and that's not what they lied and said in to people who went to check out the stream. 200 Watt Studio says in Lemoyne voice, please put the bra on or it gets the lotion. Check Discord DMs. Gotcha, Ridgedale Brand. Yeah, I'm familiar with that process, Ridgedale. It's not there. It's different than that, if that makes sense. Since it went through guidelines, it's different. I've already submitted the appeal. But no, again, you can read the email on that was sent to me. You can read that already on Twitter. I clipped most of the email. It's already up there. So you can read it, what it said. I don't have an easy way to pull it up right now with this current setup. But it says, our team has reviewed your content and unfortunately we think it violates our community guidelines. We remove the following content from YouTube. Confirmation hearing for Attorney General Merrick Garland. We know that this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. If content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal and we'll take another look. Keep reading for more details. Then it has a section that says how your content violated the policy. Quote, we've detected content in your live stream that may belong to somebody else and was not corrected following repeated warnings of possible abuse. You may not have intended to include this content, but live stream should be actively monitored by the channel owner and any potential issues should be corrected in a timely manner. What warning did they give me? Where would this warning come from? What mechanism do they have to deliver a warning to me in the middle of a live stream? There was not a single warning. YouTube didn't show up in the chat and start saying, hey, but by the way, YouTube, you want my attention? Send me some super chats, you pieces of shit. Do it like everybody else does it. But no, they didn't show up. They didn't give me any warnings. They didn't do anything. I don't have emails. I don't have anything on my creator dashboard about warnings. There were no warnings given. Plus, there's no copyrighted content. Again, this is a public hearing. Public. And it's, again, I'm streaming from the Senate website. I'm not streaming from Washington Post or someone else. Not that I would want their garbage commentary anyway. Aiden Paladin says, sweep it up, YouTube Janny. Shit. Hotshot 3070 says, have some cash. Pretty sure I heard you yell from 500 miles away. Yeah, Ridgedale, there were no warnings in my stream dashboard. Again, I don't even know where that would come from. 200 Watt Studio says, WTF, how can you copyright a public hearing? You can't. Something else happened. I don't know if it was like an organized flagging attempt. I try and avoid claiming that there was like an organized flagging attempt unless I have actual evidence of it. But considering it's a strike, community guideline strikes, those tend to come from flagging. That tends to be the issue there. Whereas demonetization is detached from flagging. Just so you guys know, little intel inside YouTube, demonetization is not related to flagging. They're correlated, but the systems are actually separate. Flagging goes directly to community guidelines only. So we'll see. We'll see if we get this. Oh, this could be a long break. This is probably their lunch break. This is probably a 30-minute break or so. By the way, whoever said it was the election talk, especially from the hearing, they didn't cite that as the reason. They didn't cite that as the reason. That would have been different. They would have given that as a different reason why the video was taken down. They would just go ahead and tell you because it's in their guidelines. Teleco, very possible that they sent me a literal by mail warning. I'll get it in a couple days. Mike David from Red Bar Radio responded to you on his latest free speech episode. You're at 3 hours, 47 minutes, 45 seconds. He goes in on me pretty hard. Well, you sent that nice reply. You sent that nice comment on my thing. What's he say? Again, I don't know this guy. Hobo Frodo, what happened is YouTube shut down the live stream, the last live stream. Right in the middle of it. Temporary account? I don't think so. Vezin Man, you got Mark of Faith. The overpriced collection begins. Yes, yes. Angry Baneling, why are you sending out comments full of Linkin Park lyrics? Let's see. Yeah, Mr. K, I know about the presidential election integrity. I didn't suggest anything about the presidential election at all. I said that the Supreme Court itself refused to hear the cases because, of course, they did, because they would be in a real dilemma if they tried to rule now on what was already after the inauguration. That's not controversial. It doesn't say anything about the election at all. Killer King, which stream is gone? The one that I started this morning. Let's see. Linda Marie says, thank you, Nick, for giving us a voice and using your voice. Every other stream I saw on YouTube, people can only watch but not comment at all and ask questions. WTF. Sent to Justice Chat because YouTube doesn't deserve my sweet money. F you, Susan, and YouTube, you Karens. Night of Hope says, I contacted Ted Cruz's office to ask them to look into this also. If they do this enough, something has to give at least some point. It'd be great. I would love to talk to Ted Cruz in general. Umbrella Guy says, how dare you anger daddy YouTube, King Grifter. Lemoyne, the 200-watt studio says, Nikki, there is no evidence of widespread flagging. No, I know. I don't have any evidence of that. That's why I haven't suggested that it happen. Which is typically a YouTube video that gets a guideline issue is due to a flag. Typically, not always. Angry Baneling, I don't hate on Linkin Park. I'm just curious what you're up to. Okay, here comes the hearing. We're back.
Will resume. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana.
Seems like there's way less people in that room
Thank
now.
you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Judge.
Nice to see you, Senator.
Good to see you, sir.
Kennedy's
I wanna
a
follow up a
Republican,
little
I
bit
believe.
On something that Senator Booker talked about. What to you is justice?
Technotoad, yes. Hirono did briefly ask
Everybody
if he ever
treated
assaulted
equally?
anybody.
Regardless of their position in society, powerful, powerless, rich, poor, Republican, Democrat, black, white, equal treatment, equal justice under the law.
I want to
Mr. K, it's on
go
Twitter.
a little further, press you a little bit on that. Is it justice if you have an unjust law that's applied equally?
Well, no, the unjust law is itself the lack of justice.
Let's narrow it down to punishment in justice. If I suggested to you that justice and the concept of punishment is when someone gets what he deserves. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I suppose it depends on what gets what he deserves mean, but yes, I think justice requires individualized determination of the kind of crime you did, and the mitigating circumstances. Yes.
Well, let me put it another way. If is a person who commits a crime a sinner in the moral sense, or a sick person?
What?
Well, this is again probably beyond my competence. I think with justice comes mercy.
So
And
Senator
so I think
Kennedy
we
is
have to take
actually
into
really
consideration
interesting.
all different kinds
Don't
of
discount him
things.
right away.
I also think that the kind of crime that we're talking about is relevant to the question of what kind of person it is. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't know exactly what you're asking me.
Okay. Let me shift gears here.
Yeah.
Were you chief judge when the coronavirus hit us?
Unfortunately for my successor, my term ran out just before coronavirus hit us.
Well,
Okay,
if you
okay.
had been chief judge,
Yes.
would you have adopted a rule that said if one of our employees in the court gets coronavirus and goes to the hospital and is treated and is released and wants to come back to work at the court, it would be discriminatory to ask them to take a coronavirus test?
No.
Okay. Isn't that what happened with a lot of our nursing homes throughout the country?
I honestly don't know what happened with the nursing homes. I don't know what they were doing with respect
The man
to-
doesn't know
to,
anything.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be evasive. I really don't know the facts here. I mean,
He's asking
I
a
think
good question
in
if
the
this guy
example
has
you gave
no
me,
idea.
There's nothing discriminatory about asking people who might be infected from a public health point of view to be sure they don't infect other people. And if a determination is made they're not infected, then of course that's the end of it. Equal treatment doesn't mean we don't take into consideration the possibilities of different degrees of health in a particular circumstance. And I honestly don't know what happened with the nursing home. I know that it was terrible that many people got.
Look at him
COVID in the
scrambling for
nursing
this
homes,
question.
and it was a major vector of the spread of the infection. But I don't know why that was, except that there are people cooped up in one place, and it's easy to spread that way.
All right. I think science tells us that keeping our schools closed has a disproportionate impact on poor people and children from poor families, and on families, including but not limited to children of color. At what point do you think our refusal of some of our leadership in our schools to reopen becomes a civil rights violation?
So, Senator,
That's a good
I
question,
completely
too.
agree with your description of the consequences of the school closing. I tutor two children in a neighborhood of Washington, D.C., where most of the people, students in the school are people of color, and I've been able to tutor them by Zoom every week, but they have, and they're taking classes by Zoom, and it's much more difficult, obviously, for them, although they've done terrifically, not because of me, but they have.
Stop
than
crying.
It would be with people with other resources.
Fuck.
That's all right. I don't, I think that, public officials have to weigh very serious competing concerns with respect to how to deal with COVID. There's just no doubt about it. On the one hand, we have to be very worried about sending kids back in their schooling. And on the other hand, we have to be very worried about not spreading the disease in a way that kills them, or more importantly, not more likely, their parents or their grandparents. And
Judge
God, I
Merrick,
don't want to be the person who makes that judgment.
I understand. I get it. Sorry to interrupt. I hate.
No, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
We just have limited time. You have written in one of your opinions. I'm gonna read. I know you haven't memorized.
I'm uploading
all of your opinions.
other stream
You
to the other
said
channel right now.
The Constitution, quote, does not contemplate that the District of Columbia, may serve as a state for purposes of the apportionment of congressional representatives. That textual evidence is supported by historical evidence concerning the general understanding at the time of the district's creation. Is that still your considered opinion?
Yes, and I would say that that is a case, one of my earliest cases, which taught me what it means to be a judge, which is to do something the opposite of what you would do if you had public policy concern. I think that citizens of the District of Columbia should be able to vote, but I didn't think that the Constitution gave me authority on my own to give it to them. And it made me sad, but it reaffirmed my role as a judge.
Okay. In my last 20 seconds, I'm going to ask you if you agree with this statement. Allowing, and I'm not suggesting the answer one way or the other, I just want to know what you believe. Allowing biological males to compete in an all-female sport deprives women of the opportunity to participate fully and fairly in sports and is fundamentally unfair to female athletes.
This is a very difficult societal question that you're asking me. I know what underlies it.
I know, but you're going to be Attorney General.
Well, but I may not be the one who has to make policy decisions like that, but it's not that I'm adverse to it. Look, I think every human being should be treated with dignity and respect.
Not an answer.
That's an overriding sense of my own character, but an overriding sense of what the law requires. The particular question of how Title IX applies in schools is one, and in light of the Bostock case, which I know you're very familiar with, is something that I would have to look at when I have a chance to do that. I've not had the chance to consider these kinds of issues in my career so far. But I agree that this is a difficult question.
Thank you, Judge.
He didn't ask you to agree if it was a difficult question. He asked you what your position was.
As a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee,
Yellow Flash
Senator
2 says, offer to let Susan use your chair. No. Okay, so this is a new committee member.
Judge Garland, and to your family, just thank you for your many, many years of public service, and should you be fortunate enough to be confirmed in this next chapter. I've spent a little bit more than 20 years in public service myself in different capacities, including the prior 6 years prior to my appointment to the Senate as California's Secretary of State and Chief Elections Officer. My mission in that role was to increase voter participation and ensure free and fair elections. As the country has become more diverse, not just states like California and New York, but throughout the nation, it's no coincidence that we have seen a resurgence of white supremacy and violent extremism.
Oh, okay.
And history is clear. Voter suppression is rooted in white supremacy. This is true now.
That's
and
right.
has been true ever since Reconstruction and the establishment of the Department of Justice.
That's where it's rooted, even in places where it's not.
At its outset. It should not be lost on any of us that after the 2013 Shelby v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court, we've seen a wave of legislation in states across the nation which have the effect of making it harder for eligible citizens to register to vote, to stay registered to vote, or to simply cast their ballot. I know Senator Leahy touched on the subject of voting rights in his questioning earlier today, but I want to acknowledge that despite the success
Can't have
of the
voter ID
2020
or anything
election,
like that,
which has
guys.
been deemed secure, new voter suppression laws
Most secure.
are being introduced right now across the country under the false pretext of preventing voter fraud. Now, we all saw how former President Trump's years of lies about voter fraud, the big lie,
Years of it.
radicalized many of his supporters.
Years of it now.
And led
We're
not just to
rewriting
physical
history to go
threats
back to
against
years
elections
of it.
officials, elections offices, polling places, and even voters, but they ultimately led to the violent insurrection here in the nation's capital. I know you touched on this in your opening remarks, but can you expand on how you will combat the white supremacy that threatens the safety and fairness of our elections specifically?
I thought we had safe and secure elections. What do we even need to do?
You've asked a lot of questions all in one, which is
It's complicated.
it's a complicated problem, right? So I strongly believe in voting and in increasing every possible opportunity for voting, which of course Congress can do even on its own. The Elections Clause of the Constitution permits the Congress to set time, place, and manner and to alter state regulations in that respect. In default, the state decides, but Congress can act that way. So that is one thing that Congress could do as a matter of legislation. As I said, I think I'd like to work with the Congress on improving
you could
the
secure elections really
record
easy.
with respect to
A
Section
voter
4,
ID.
so that we can use the tool of Section
That would
5.
work.
We do have the authority
Pretty much
of
every
Section 2.
Western
It
country
does
in the world
require,
uses them, I think.
It changes the
Even
burden of proof,
non-Western
and it
countries
requires
use
to
them.
attack one by one changes in election laws. But it does give us the opportunity to bring cases both where there was intention to discriminate, but also where there's a overall disparate impact with respect to discrimination. So we have a number of tools available to us, and the voting rights section of the Civil Rights Division was established for the purpose of pursuing those cases, and we would do so.
Okay, thank you. It's, I want to dig a little bit deeper on this because you're absolutely
thank
right.
God.
We need,
Yes,
in
please
my
dig
opinion,
deeper.
to restore the full strength of the Federal Voting Rights Act. There's a lot that can and should be done, not just in terms of elections administration with respect to voting rights, but the protection of voters themselves. You know, people should be able to vote free of any harassment, intimidation, obstacles, etc.
Getting an
And part of what
ID
works
isn't
against
harassment or
that
intimidation.
is, again, rooted in white supremacy, this big lie.
Which big
We
lie?
all sat through the impeachment trial, and the results notwithstanding, you can't help but be moved by the evidence presented by the House managers. Again, how President Trump's big lie about voter fraud radicalized so many of his supporters. Now, I was struck by a February 19th opinion
Phoenix
piece
Lord
in the
Asserman
Washington
says
Post
you were shut
by
down
Jim
for
Sciutto
red pilling about Australia.
parallels
The feds
between
want
the
you quiet.
Capitol insurrectionists and foreign terrorist organizations that respectfully ask be inserted into the record, Mr. Chairman. In it, Jim Sciutto writes, and I'll quote, "Domestic radicalism has deep parallels to jihadist terrorism. Both movements are driven by alienation from the political system and a resulting breakdown in social norms. For some groups and individuals, this breakdown leads to violence they see as justified to achieve political ends." End quote. Now, as we all know,
Voter
the
ID is
definition of
jihadi
terrorism
terrorism.
is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political ends. President Trump's political end was clear: stopping the certification of the 2020 election at the Capitol on January 6th. One could argue that right-wing groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers have acted like terrorist cells, communicating with one another, training together, and preparing for the moment they are activated for their mission. Indeed, President Trump instructed the Proud Boys on national television to stand back and stand by. And then he summoned them to the Capitol on January 6th as Congress
Pulled out
was
his book of
meeting
spells,
to certify
pulled out the
election.
reagents, wrote the runes, and
What
summoned
happened
them.
on January 6th was not a property crime, was not vandalism in reference to a question you were asked earlier. Judge Garland, as we sit here in the United States Capitol surrounded by National Guard troops and barbed wire, how will you bring the full resources of the Justice Department to bear on white supremacist organizations that pose an ongoing threat to not just our safety and not just the safety of this Capitol building, but to our fundamental democracy for which it stands.
I couldn't agree more that extremist groups, and particularly white supremacist groups, do pose a fundamental threat to our democracy, and they have posed that threat throughout our history. And as I recounted, that was the reason the Justice Department was originally established, to fight the first incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan.
What incarnation?
The best that I can do is, as I said, my first priority will be to have a briefing on where we are, if I'm confirmed, with the investigations, which from the outside appear quite vigorous and nationwide, and to find out what additional resources we need. But that is just a focus on what happened in the Capitol. We also have to have a focus on what is happening all over the country and on where this could spread and where this came from. And that it does require a lot of resources. I am very pleased to have read that the director of the FBI believes that this kind of extremism is the most dangerous threat to the country, and that's where he's putting FBI resources. And that is where I would put Justice Department resources. And we need very much to make sure that that's the case. I do want to be careful that we also always worry about the foreign threat, because it is always with us, and the fact that nothing has happened recently doesn't mean it could not happen tomorrow.
Dragon's Treasure says, I can't believe I offered my tea to a scammer. YouTube has shown me the light. I want all my tea back. Who wants my money?
On our institutions of democracy and of our ability to go forward with our daily lives in safety has to be stopped, and that we need it. It's a government-wide, but also a Justice Department-wide obligation.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator.
Mike Lombardo
Senator
says, wait,
Tillis
we
would be
think
next,
that's
but
effing
he
ridiculous.
is not in Zoom range for that possibility. And so Senator Blackburn, if she can connect with us, is next up.
Marsha Blackburn. Mithrin Emrys says, hey, Merrick, what school did they attend? Do they go to a D.C. public school, or are they attending a private school? My guess is they are kids of friends of yours and attend an exclusive private school in the area.
For
Maybe.
your willingness to serve and for your career in public service. And I will tell you, as I've talked to Tennesseans about this, they care a lot about law, order, timeliness.
Marsha
at
Blackburn's
the
usually
Justice
pretty good.
Department. And after the Christmas Day bombing, you and I discussed this, and the bombing that took place in Nashville. They really are interested in the principles and the convictions of our nation's top law enforcement official. And my hope is, and I think the expectation is, that you will assure the American people that you are going to apply the law fairly and equitably, because in this country, as we know, no one is above the law. Now, I know you've been asked about the Durham
Fairly and
investigation.
equally, though. Not
And
equitably,
I
equally.
will tell you that this is important to Tennesseans, and making certain that that investigation is going to be completed, and that you are going to work to be certain that it is not impeded and is completed, and that you're committed to seeing this through to completion.
Well, thank you, Senator. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity we had to discuss these matters earlier as well. As I said, with respect to the Durham investigation, I don't know anything about it other than what has appeared in the media. The investigation has been discreet, as appropriate, with respect to expressions of its status. I understand that Mr. Durham has been permitted to remain in his position, and I know of nothing that would give me any doubt that that was the correct decision.
And I appreciate that. And likewise, we had discussed the investigation into Hunter Biden's business dealings. And we want to make certain that you commit to allowing Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss to complete that investigation and bring that evidence forward.
And similarly with Mr. Durham, I don't know anything about that investigation other than what I've read in the media. And again, that investigation has been proceeding discreetly and not publicly, as all investigations should. I understand that the Delaware U.S. Attorney was permitted to stay on as U.S. Attorney.
Echo.
I have absolutely no reason to doubt that that was their correct decision.
Are they giving him reverb to make him sound like God or
And
something?
let's talk a little bit about China, because we discussed some of that for the record. And our last DNI had stated that China is our greatest threat. So I would like to hear from you. Do you agree that the Chinese Communist Party is an enemy of the American people?
Well, I don't have the same familiarity with the intelligence information that the director of National Intelligence has. So in terms of comparing, say, the threat from China and the threat from Russia, I'm just not competent, to make that comparison. And
Russia.
I have learned in my professional career not to make judgments on which I am not competent. But I certainly, from what the director said,
can you tell he's been getting
no doubt
talking points from the Biden?
China is a threat with respect to hacking of our computers, hacking of our infrastructure, theft of our intellectual property. All of these are very difficult problems, and we have to defend against.
Well, we do.
200 Watt Studio says, someone throw some eggs to him because the scrambling would make a great
and
omelet.
Some of the issues that are there. We all are very concerned about the issues that surround China.
Don't ask him a 230 question. He's an idiot. He doesn't know anything about it.
The way they threaten our democracy and our economic leadership around the globe. And we're also concerned about the Chinese military links into our American universities through things like the Confucius Institutes. And for instance, recently there was a situation at Harvard with a cancer researcher, and he was caught trying to smuggle 21 vials of biological material out of the U.S. and get it to China. And I would hope that you agree that this threat puts American intellectual property and technology at risk. And
he's going to not know about this story.
That you would assure the American people that you're going to put the full force of the Department of Justice forward to investigate and to prosecute every one of these spies that are working on U.S. soil.
Well, Senator, I'm not familiar with that circumstance.
Not familiar
so
with it.
I can't comment on it specifically, but I can assure you that the Justice Department's National Security Division was created in part for the purpose of ferreting out espionage by foreign agents, and that is also the role of the FBI and the two working together. And if foreign agents are caught stealing American intellectual property, American trade secrets, American materials, that they will be prosecuted. Yes, of course.
Thank you. We're about a year into this pandemic, and technology has allowed for us to do work like we in the Senate are doing with WebEx. I think we've all found that it gives a lot of flexibility, but as we are spending more time online, we hear from people about holding big tech accountable. As I said, you've discussed Section 230 earlier, and we
You discussed how he doesn't know what it is.
Antitrust lawsuits. Of course, you all have the current suit against Google, and I will hope that you are going to allow that lawsuit to continue.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about a particular lawsuit, but I don't see, every matter I'd have to ask for a briefing on. But much of that lawsuit is public. And again, given what I've read, I don't see any reason why that investigation, the decision to institute that investigation would be changed. But I only know what I've read with respect to the descriptions of the public filings.
Let me ask
Nova
you
Zero
one
says,
more
"Hey Nick, I'm
question,
glad
and
that
then
your
I
channel's
wanna have a
secure. It's like
series
ultra
of
fortified
questions
now,
come
right?"
to you as QFRs. The President Biden has talked about reinstating the Obama administration practice of paying settlement money from winning lawsuits to third-party interest groups like La Raza, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and the Urban League. And it's just, I find it really interesting that they would choose to have that money go to these outside groups instead of to victims or to the U.S. Treasury. So, do you plan on reinstating that policy, and how would you justify reinstating that policy?
Ooh.
I don't have any plan one way or the other. I know you raised that policy when we were talking before, and I understand your concern about it. Obviously, damages recoveries should first go to help victims. I don't know very much at all about the policy, and it would be something I would have to consider if I'm confirmed. I have to hear the arguments.
She asked you about it
on both
earlier.
sides of,
You just said, why didn't you look it
the
up?
policy obviously started, and also why it was rescinded.
Thank
Well, I
you
can
so
see
much.
why it was
I
rescinded.
appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Doesn't
Thanks,
seem
Senator
like there was
Blackburn.
much
Senator
confusion
Ossoff,
over why you would
welcome to
rescind
the
that
committee.
bad
Your
policy.
turn to question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Judge Garland. Congratulations on your nomination. Thanks for the time that we spent by video conference discussing some of these issues. Thank you also for sharing your family's immigrant story with the committee. It mirrors my own. My great-grandparents came here fleeing anti-Semitism in 1911 and 1913 from Eastern Europe, and I'm sure that your ancestors
Sleepy Gone
could
says,
hardly have
have to
imagined.
have to
I'm
watch
sure that your
repeat as
ancestors
I've
could
got
hardly have
D&D soon,
imagined
but just
that
heard
you'd now
about
be
Coca-Cola Be Less
sitting
White
before this
training.
committee,
If truth and
pending
PC culture
confirmation
has
for this
gone too
position.
far in white knighting.
Judge, I want to ask you about equal justice. Black Americans continue to endure profiling, harassment, brutality, discrimination in policing and prosecution, in sentencing, and in incarceration. How can you use the immense power of the Office of the Attorney General to make real America's promise of equal justice for all? And can you please be specific about the tools that you'll have at your disposal?
Yeah. So this is a substantial part of why I wanted to be the Attorney General. I'm deeply aware of the moment that the country is in. When Senator Durbin was reading the statement of Robert Kennedy, it hit me that we are in a similar moment to the moment he was in. So there are a lot of things that the department can do. One of those things has to do with the problem of mass incarceration, the over-incarceration of American citizens, and of its disproportionate effect on Black Americans and communities of color and other minorities. There are different ways in which we can try, that is, disproportionate in the sense both of population, but also given the data we have on the fact that crimes are not committed by these crimes are not committed in any greater number than in others, and that similar crimes are not charged in the same way. So we have to figure out ways to deal with this. So one important way, I think, is to focus on the crimes that really matter, that to bring our charging and our arresting on violent crime and others that deeply affect our society, and not have such an overemphasis on marijuana possession, for example. which has disproportionately affected communities of color and then damaged them far after the original arrest because of the inability to get jobs. We have to look at our charging policies again and go back to the policy that I helped Janet Reno draft during
It's
her period.
Reno time!
Drafted while he was the Attorney General of not feeling that we must charge every offense to the maximum, that we don't have to seek the highest possible offense with the highest possible sentence, that we should give discretion to our prosecutors to make the offense and the charge fit the crime and be proportional to the damage that it does to our society. That we should look at we should also look closely and be more sympathetic towards retrospective reductions in sentences, which the First Step Act has given us some opportunity, although not enough, to reduce sentences to a fair amount. And legislatively, we should look at equalizing, for example, what's known as the crack powder ratio, which has had an enormously disproportionate impact on communities of color, but which evidence shows is not related to the dangerousness of the two drugs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we should
that makes sense.
as President Biden has suggested, seek the elimination of mandatory minimum.
The crack
so
powder
that we
ratio
once again,
is
give,
basically
authority to
crack
district
gets
judges,
punished
trial
more
judges to make
harshly than
determinations based
cocaine.
on, all of the sentencing factors that judges normally apply and that don't take away from them the ability to do justice in individual cases. All that will make a big difference in the things that you're talking about.
Thank you, Judge Garland. And let's discuss accountability for local agencies. The Civil Rights Division has the authority to launch pattern or practice investigations targeting systemic violations of constitutional rights or violations of federal statutes governing law enforcement. Tomorrow will be the first anniversary of the murder of Ahmad Arbury in Glenn County, Georgia, who was shot to death in broad daylight in the street on camera. But local authorities chose to look the other way, and were it not for the activism of Georgia's NAACP, there likely would not have been any prosecution in that case. How can Congress equip DOJ's Civil Rights Division to launch more and more effective pattern or practice investigations without asking you to comment on the details of the Arbury case? And how else can the Department of Justice use its authority to ensure that where local agencies violate constitutional rights or fail to uphold the
Amyot
guarantee
says,
of
seriously,
equal
at this point,
protection,
what does
there's
Garland
accountability?
know?
Well, I appreciate it. You're not asking me to talk about a pending case. What I will say is that, like many, many Americans, I was shocked by what I saw in videos of Black Americans being killed over this last summer. That's, I do think, created a moment in the national life that brought attention from people who had not seen what Black Americans and other members of community of color had known for decades. But it did bring everything to the fore and created a moment in which we have an opportunity to make dramatic changes and really bring forth equal justice under the law, which is our commitment of the Justice Department. So the Civil Rights Division is the place where we focus these operations. You're exactly right that pattern or practice investigations are the core of our ability to bring actions here. That these lead to all different kinds of remedies, sometimes consent decrees as a potential remedy. We also can criminally prosecute violations of constitutional rights. We can also provide funding for police departments to reform themselves. I do believe that officers who follow the law and the Constitution want that accountability. They want officers who do not to become accountable, because if that doesn't happen, they're Their law enforcement agency is tainted. They lose the credibility in the community, and without the community's trust, they can't bring safety. So we have this number of tools. Whether we need additional tools in this particular area, I don't know. Obviously, the resources are necessary. I'm probably going to be like a broken record in every one of these areas for us to do our job.
And Judge Garland, with my time so
I'm
short,
sorry,
will you commit to working with my office and with this committee to determine
No.
what additional authorities
No, I don't know you.
the
You don't
department
know
may
me.
need and what resources you may require in order to be able to bring more and more effective pattern or practice investigations where appropriate?
Absolutely, Senator. I'm sorry to have gone on.
No problem. Thank you, Judge Garland. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The Wait 1968 says, sorry to hear about your earlier stream, Nick. Hope this isn't
Thank
a
you,
sign of
Judge.
what's to come for calling out
And
fake
thank you,
news,
Senator
Australia.
Ossoff.
Stay strong, King.
And so only in the Senate would we characterize a 5-minute round of questioning as a lightning round. That's what we're going to shift to at this moment. And those senators who wish to ask a second question will have 5 minutes to do so. And
200
I'm
Watt
going
Studio
to
says,
kick it off if I can.
I would like to see a race
I wanna
mashup with
address
Stuttering Garland and
an
Stammering
issue
Biden.
which doesn't come up very often in this type of hearing, but should, and that is the state of America's
TCV Titan
federal
says,
prisons.
the over-incarceration of American citizens.
We
Madam
talk
Vice
a lot about
President, got
justice
anything
under
to
the
say
law,
for yourself?
sentencing, enforcement.
And Mr. President.
We know the outcome in many, many cases is that a person is incarcerated for sometimes a very lengthy period of time. How long that period of time is and how that person is treated in prison should be our concern as well. It's a reflection on our values as a nation, just as many other things are. So the first thing I would say is that I made a serious mistake, along with many others, including the current president, in supporting a bill more than 25 years ago, which established a standard for sentencing crack cocaine 100 to 1 compared to powder cocaine. The net result of it was a failure of policy.
Racist.
It did not reduce addiction. It did not raise the price of crack cocaine. Just the opposite occurred. We ended up arresting thousands of Americans and sentencing them to lengthy sentences, primarily African Americans. And so I introduced a bill several years ago, the Fair Sentencing Act, which was signed into law by President Obama. And then I worked with Senator Grassley, Senator Lee, who's here today, as well as Senator Booker and others, to pass the First Step Act. The idea was to reconcile some of the injustice in our sentencing under that earlier law. President Trump, much to our surprise, signed it into law and even spoke positively about it at the State of the Union. Unfortunately, it has not been implemented, and the provisions in there to prepare people for release from prison as well as to reduce sentences
They're
not been
surprised
effectively
because
enforced.
Trump is racist.
So,
Like
point
they're
number
the
one, I
racists
hope you
here.
put that on your agenda
Dick Durbin
because
was
I'll be
the
back in touch
racist in
with
this
you to ask.
scenario.
Second point, the United States has 5% of the population of the world and 20% of the COVID infections and deaths. It's a terrible commentary on our failure to deal with this public health crisis. But to make matters even worse, the infection rate in federal prison populations is 4
We're
times
one of the
what
most-
it is in the surrounding community. And more
One
than
of the most
230
highly
federal prisoners have
traveled
died.
countries on the
We
planet.
need to have a sensible
We have people
and
from all
humane
over coming here all the
response
time.
to compassionate release in this time of pandemic. Senator Grassley and I have introduced legislation along those lines, and I'm going to ask you to look at that carefully as well. And the third is, last item that I'll bring up for your response, was an article written several years ago in the New Yorker magazine, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, by Dr. Atul Gawande, who is a surgeon in the Boston metropolitan area, a prolific writer and a very insightful man. And he wrote an article about the impact of solitary confinement on the human mind, and went further to talk about how people in a perilous situation can be reduced to an inhuman level just by isolation, 23 hours a day sitting in the cell by yourself.
23 hours a
It
day.
just has that impact.
Yeah.
And I looked into it to see what was happening at the federal level. I'm happy to report to you that things are marginally better, but only marginally. I think that isolation is cruel and unusual, and has to be used in some circumstances for an extremely dangerous inmate, but unfortunately is used in too many circumstances now. many states are way ahead of the federal prison system in looking at this issue.
I feel like I do okay in
I
solitary.
only have a minute left, and it's all yours to react.
Do you get a book in solitary?
These are all easy because I had already thought about all of them, and in each case, I think I will be looking at each one of these problems. The First Step Act, both with respect to our, if I'm obviously if I'm confirmed, the First Step Act with respect to the re-entry,
lockdowns aren't a problem though.
Education that's required so that people don't become recidivists. They're able to go into societies. The First Step Act with respect to the coverage of the act for retroactive reduction in sentences. I also, over the years, maybe like you, I've learned more and more about the crack powder distinction and how, by reading the Sentencing Commission reports, about how there seems to be little, if any, support for making that. So I now am of the view that there is no reason, so I'm very interested in reform in that area. I have read but don't know a lot about the solitary confinement issue, but I can't imagine that. Obviously, it's required in some circumstances to protect people from other people, but it's not any kind of regular measure for incarceration. So all three of these areas are ones that I was already planning to look at, and I can assure you that I will.
Thanks, Judge. I see Senator Lee is here, and I'm going to recognize him next in the lightning round.
The lightning
Thank
round.
you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Garland, consistent with the idea of this being a lightning round, I'm going to start with some questions that can be yes or no. If they require more than that, you can say yes with this or that minor caveat, but I'd prefer a yes or a no if you can provide one of these. Do you believe that individuals who advocate for the rights of unborn human beings are rendered unfit for public office by virtue of having engaged in such advocacy?
No.
Do you believe that efforts to purge voter rolls of individuals who have either died or have left the state in question, or to require voter identification are racially discriminatory and an assault on voting rights?
This one is one I can't answer yes or no because you're asking about motivations of individuals, some of whom may have discriminatory purpose and some of whom have no discriminatory purpose.
Okay. I think that answers my question there because I guess what I'm asking is, does an individual, without knowing more than that, is there anything about those comments or support for those positions that in and of themselves would make that person a racist or an assault on voting rights?
Again, there's nothing about the comment itself, but when there's such a thing as circumstantial evidence, obviously, and if there's enormously disparate impact of things that somebody continues to propose, it's not unreasonable to draw conclusions.
You realize that he got in the trap and he's working his way around it.
Statement, no.
Do you believe that Republicans in the United States, and by Republicans I mean as a whole, are determined to, quote, leave our communities to the mercy of people and institutions driven by hate, bigotry, and fear of any threat to the status quo, close quote?
I don't make generalizations about members of political parties. I would never do that.
I appreciate that and wouldn't expect otherwise. The reason I raise these ones is that these are questions that have been drawn from comments made by Vanita Gupta, who's been nominated to be the Associate Attorney General, has advocated for each of these positions.
Well, Senator, I know Vanita Gupta now quite well. I didn't know her before, but since the nomination, I've gotten a chance to talk with her and speak with her. I have to tell you, I regard her as a person of great integrity and a person who is dedicated to the mission of the department, and particularly equal justice under law.
Understand?
So I don't know
I'm not asking you to weigh in on her, on her as a person. Yeah. I'm just talking about the comments. Let's move on.
Mike Lee just handed him.
Individuals' past statements, statements in the past, as an adult, declaring that one racial group is superior to another. Would statements like that be relevant to an evaluation of whether such a person should be put in charge of running the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division?
So, Senator, I've read in the last few days these allegations about Kristen Clark, who I also have gotten to know, who I also trust, who I believe is a person of integrity, whose views about the Civil Rights Division I have discussed with her, and they are in line with my own. I have every reason to want her. She is an experienced former blind prosecutor of hate crimes, and we need somebody like that to be running the...
I'm asking about the statement. I'm not asking about her as a person. I'm asking about the statement. In the abstract, would someone who has made that comment, would that comment itself be relevant to the question whether that person, having made that statement, should be put in charge of running the Civil Rights Division?
All I can tell you is I've had many conversations with her about her views about that, about the Civil Rights Division, about what kind of matters she would investigate.
What about anti-Semitic comments? Would those be relevant to someone wanting to run
You
the Civil
know
Rights
my
Division?
views about anti-Semitism.
Right.
No one needs to question those.
I'm not
obviously.
questioning your views.
I know you're not, but I also want you to know.
Oh,
I'm a
look
pretty
at how
good judge
rattled
of what
Garland
an
is.
Anti-Semite is, and I do not believe that she is an anti-Semite, and I do not believe she is discriminatory in any sense.
Okay, tell me this, Judge. You are a man of integrity, and one who honors and respects the laws. What assurances can you give us, as one who has been nominated to serve as the Attorney General of the United States, that you, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, what assurances can you give Americans who are Republican, who are pro-life, who are religious, people who are members of certain minority groups, in short, half or more than half of the country, telling them that the U.S. Department of Justice, if you're confirmed, will protect them if Department of Justice leaders have condoned radical positions like those that I've described.
Look, I'll say again, I don't believe that either Vanita or Kristen condone those positions, but and I have complete faith
Their
in them.
statements.
But we are a leadership team, along with Lisa Monaco, that will run the department. And in the end, the final decision is mine. The buck stops with me, as Harry Truman said. And I will assure the people that you're talking about, I am a strong believer in religious liberty, and there will not be any discrimination under my watch.
Thank you.
Oh, Mike Lee just handed
Remind the
him his
committee
balls.
that I might remind the committee that the statements are being alleged can all be asked of the actual witness. The committee is going to have a hearing on these individuals, and it would only be fair to take the question to them as opposed to asking for a reaction from
why?
someone who did not make that statement.
Why not their boss?
Senator Klobuchar?
You don't get to ask questions of their direct supervisor?
I appreciated, Judge, your full-throated defense not only of religious liberty.
Liberty or death
which
is
I know
her
important
is she
to Senator Lee,
including the murder
but
of
also your team
David Dorn,
and the
or did
people
his
that
life
you wanna
not
work
matter
with
because he
going
wasn't
forward.
looted?
And while
Bingo.
the chairman is correct, we
Wasn't
can ask
looting.
questions of those
Com Excellence says,
nominees.
please
I
do
think it's important to hear from
version of the
you,
Mortal Kombat
with
thing.
their hearings coming up, of your beliefs about how they can do the job. So I appreciate that. I know both of them and have a lot of respect for them.
Thank you, Senator. They have skills that I do not have. They have experiences that I do not have. Likewise, Lisa Monaco has experiences in the intelligence world that I do not have. No human being can have all of the skills necessary to run the Justice Department, and I need
Except
this
for
leadership
me.
team if I'm going to be successful, if you confirm me.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. And one thing that we didn't touch on when I asked my first round of questions was the Violence Against Women Act. And I'm going to be working with Senator Feinstein and others on this committee to finally get that done. I don't know if you followed this, but we've had a delay in getting that reauthorized. It's tended to be a bipartisan bill in the past, and I have several provisions in the bill, including one on to fix a loophole that exists involving, it's called the boyfriend loophole, but it's not as positive as that sounds, about getting guns after people have committed serious crimes. But the second piece is a bill called the Abby Hunold Act, which is a rape victim in Minnesota who worked with us, and Senator Cornyn is my co-sponsor of the bill, to be able to do a better job with law enforcement to investigate sexual assault crimes. But just in general, do you want to talk about your views on the Violence Against Women Act and the Justice Department role in training and the like across the country?
Yeah, so as I know you know, the Violence Against Women Act was pressed by Senator Joe Biden many years ago, and he has a deep commitment to its continued reauthorization, as do I. I was in the Justice Department when we set up the first office for violence against women for the purpose of coordinating departmental programs in this area. I know this requires resources. Both of the examples that you give, again, I don't know the specifics, but from the description, I can hardly imagine a serious disagreement. We have to provide the resources necessary to help rape victims, obviously, and I don't see any reason why somebody who commits a violent crime against a person but isn't married or have an intimate relationship should be treated any differently than one who does. So I think I'm all in on the violence against women, re-upping the statute.
He's all in on the
Authorization,
violence
I guess.
against women,
Thank you.
he just said.
Another thing that I've been very focused on, part because my dad struggled with alcoholism most of his life and got through that thanks to treatment and recovery, is to give that same kind of opportunity to people in the criminal justice system. And drug courts are a big presence in Minnesota, as is treatment. We're home of Hazelton Betty Ford, as well as many other fine treatment centers. And we've worked really hard here. I've led some of the efforts on diversion with federal courts, with drug court, and of course there's much use of them on the state courts. Could you talk about your views on that?
Yeah, no, I think drug courts and diversion are an excellent idea for people who have addiction and need to be treated.
YouTube just yeeted
now that
3/4 of the viewers.
Opioid crisis has struck large parts of America. Many Americans now understand that sometimes it is just not a question of willpower to turn this stuff down, that this is these kind of drugs take control of your lives and you just can't do anything about it. And treating people in those circumstances in the criminal justice system is abuse of them, but also it's a terrible misallocation of resources. So the drug courts that are able to get people into addiction programs are godsend, and I'm in favor of them.
And thank you for also mentioning opioids, which has been such a scourge. We lost Prince in Minnesota because of opioids, but we lost a lot of other people that people may not know their names, and a lot of kids to opioids. And actually, Senator Whitehouse and I, along with Senator Portman, Senator Graham's been involved in this, and many others, Grassley, have been leading the way for a while before people were even identifying this as an issue. And commitment to the treatment side of it, which you've already made just now, but also to the prosecution of synthetic production and distribution, synthetic opioids, continues to this day. Could you comment briefly? I think maybe Senator Graham asked you about this, but if you could comment.
Yeah, he did, and of course I think that's right. The people who are putting the poison into the communities are the ones we should be focusing on.
Mr. Nemmer says, after the stuff during the impeachment trial, now this, I'm starting to think Lee 2024
is well known for.
He'd be a good one,
I'd
man.
like to put as much effort into this.
Apache
as we
Chief
possibly
says,
can.
lightning
Yeah, I see
round,
the
stutter
chairman is
off,
looking
go.
at me in a very polite Midwestern way to tell me
Apache
that
Chief
my
says he
time
hasn't
has
answered directly to
expired,
anything
so
so far.
Thank
Does
you.
this
I'm
have
familiar
to
with
do
the
with him
polite
being over
Midwestern
300
way.
years old? Maybe.
Senator Kennedy, your diligence has been rewarded. You have 5 minutes.
Natalie Braithwaite, thank you.
Thank you,
Cyril
Mr.
Foxity
Chairman.
says, I think Nancy Pelosi needs to give him some of the stuff she is on. All right, Kennedy, my man.
Judge, I'm really curious about your thinking on this. And I don't want my questions to be interpreted as suggestive or inconsistent with your thinking. But you and I are about the same age, I think.
I think so. That's right, Senator.
What is when
Notice
you
how
refer
Kennedy
to systemic
doesn't sound
racism,
like he's already dead.
what is that?
I think it is plain to me that there is discrimination and widespread disparate treatment of communities of color and other ethnic minorities in this country. They have a disproportionately lower employment, disproportionately lower homeownership rates, disproportionately lower ability to accumulate wealth.
Can I stop you? Because this 5 minutes goes so fast.
I'm sorry.
So you're basically saying there's a disparate impact.
There's disparate impact, which in some cases is the consequence of historical patterns. Sometimes is the consequence
Okay,
of
let me ask you this.
unconscious bias and some kind.
Stop talking.
Conscious,
When you were at the Department of Justice,
yes.
was the Department of Justice then systemically racist?
I think
Is it
each
fucking
you look
doing
for a
it
pattern or
again?
practice in each institution. When you talk about a specific institution, you look for its pattern and practices.
But how do you know what you know? In other words, you say an institution is systemically racist.
I didn't say any particular institution.
I know. I'm not saying you did. I'm saying if you say an institution is systemically racist, how do you know what you know? Do you measure it by a disparate impact, controlling you for other factors?
Well, the very
Or do
specific.
you just look at the numbers and say the system must be racist?
Well, now you've asked me a slightly different question, which I think I have a slightly different answer for.
Okay,
So
cool.
the authority the Justice Department has to investigate institutions is to look for patterns or practices of unconstitutional conduct. And if we find a pattern or a practice of unconstitutional conduct, I would describe that as institutional racism within that institution. That may not be the perfect definition, but that's what I would think.
So it's just a product of the numbers.
Well, if there is a pattern and a practice, this is not just a question of individual numbers. What we're looking for here under those investigations are patterns. Why is it that a series of similar events are occurring like that? Looking into any individual's heart is not something we can do.
Who bears the burden of proving that? The institution? Or
No,
the justice?
no. Like as in all matters of law, the burden is on the investigator to prove, first by investigation, then before a court.
Is there any other way to measure institutional racism other than the numbers, the disparate impact?
Well, yes. I mean,
Well-
you can look at large numbers of individual cases in which discriminatory conduct is actually found.
It's lovely that
intentional
YouTube is
discriminatory
doing
conduct.
this.
Then it's not just a question of numbers, but if an institution has a very large number of incidents of unconstitutional conduct, the entity is responsible in the same way a corporation is responsible for the behavior of its individuals. It's the same way as
What's the difference, though, between people who are racist and an institution that's racist?
Now we do have a cosmic question, but I think institutions are made up of.
Yeah, but this is important.
I know. I'm totally with you. I totally agree with that. Corporations are nothing other than the collection of their individuals. And the same is true for a public entity, which is in a certain way a corporation.
Okay, I got to get one more in. I'm sorry, I got 24
I'm
seconds.
sorry, you asked a very hard question. I'm trying
Well,
to give you
we
an
can
answer.
talk about this later, but I want to ask you about this concept of implicit bias.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'm a racist no matter what I do or what I think? I'm a racist, but I don't know I'm a racist?
Okay, the label racist is not one that I would apply like that. Implicit bias just means that every human being has biases. That's part of what it means to be a human being. And the point of examining our implicit biases is to bring our conscious mind up to our unconscious mind and to know when we're behaving in a stereotyped way. Everybody has stereotypes. It's not possible to go through life without working through stereotypes. And implicit biases are the ones that we don't recognize our behavior. That doesn't make you racist, no.
Who judges that? Doesn't the person judging me have his own implicit bias? How
Yes.
do I know his implicit bias isn't worse than my implicit bias?
I agree, but I'm not judging you, Senator, and I don't know
I'm not asking you
who
to,
would be judging.
but somebody, if you say you have implicit bias, that's a pejorative statement. I'm not saying you're being mean. You're not a mean guy. That's obvious. You're a nice guy. If you say somebody has implicit bias, somebody's got to make that subjective judgment, and the person making that subjective judgment has implicit bias. If it's part of being a human, then how do you know who wins?
Fair enough, but if we say that all people have implicit bias, it's not, you shouldn't take it as pejorative. This is just an element of the human condition. So you shouldn't take that as pejorative. Implicit bias is just a descriptor of the way people's
Except that's not how you use it.
Works.
That's not how you use it
How
at
about
all.
if you say that America has racists in it, just like everybody else? Does that just like everywhere else? Does that make America systemically racist?
I think I don't want to waste your time because I think this is what I said before. What I mean by systemic racism is the patterns of discrimination and disparate treatment across the country. It doesn't mean that any particular individual is a racist.
Judge, I'm in big trouble. I've gone way over.
I'm developing a bias. Thank you for the exchange.
A pleasure talking with you, Senator.
Same
I
here, Judge.
appreciate
You'll be a good attorney general.
All right, so I'd like to
Cyril
let the committee
Foxy
know
says,
that,
I think
Senator
Nancy
Hirono
Pelosi needs to get
will be the
him
next
off
up,
of some of
and
the
then
stuff
we're gonna
she's
take a
on.
break and return to 5-minute rounds.
Moncor002 says, I have you up on
Senator
computer
Hirono,
and mobile,
are
and
you
YouTube
tuned
sent
in?
me to another
Yes, I
video
am.
on my
Thank you,
mobile.
Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask what I think is a very straightforward question.
God, would they
Over
rewatch
the
some of
past
these?
couple of years, the Justice Department has initiated a number of efforts related to missing and murdered Indigenous people and women, including U.S. Attorney-led pilot projects in Alaska and Oklahoma to implement tailored tribal community response plans. To what extent do you plan to continue to focus on these and other regional engagement efforts that could help address the missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis?
Well, I certainly do intend to continue those. Again, last time I was in the Justice Department, the Office of Tribal Justice was established. I believe from looking at the org chart that it's still there. This is an important aspect. We have a responsibility to Indigenous peoples, both statutory and otherwise, to protect. And many of our problems in this country are regional, and we must focus our resources on problems that are regional. Not every problem is a national one, and regional problems have to be addressed directly with respect to the problems caused in those regions. And
Thank you, Judge Garland. Because I think this is an possibly underreported, and definitely we don't pay enough attention to what is happening to murdered and missing and Indigenous women. So I think we need to put a lot more emphasis on what's going
Allie
on there.
Braithwaite says Elmer
In the
Fudd
past
does a better
40
job
years,
of
I've seen
speaking.
a reawakening of
No, that's Porky
right-wing
Pig.
extremism. Last year, FBI Director Wray testified that the greatest domestic terrorist threat facing the United States is white extremist groups. And of course, last month we had an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol led by white supremacists and right-wing extremists. Late last month, the New York Times reported that President Trump, with the help of his Attorney General Barr, diverted law enforcement resources from combating the serious threat posed by right-wing extremist groups. Will you reprioritize Justice Department resources to address white supremacists and other right-wing extremists?
Yes, Senator, if anything was necessary to refocus our attention on white supremacists, that was the attack on the Capitol. And
There you go.
I expect to put all departmental resources necessary to combat this problem.
All of them.
Into this area to make sure both our agents and our prosecutors have the numbers and the resources to accomplish that mission.
Thank you. My next question has to do with the immigration courts. And we discussed immigration and the courts when we were able to meet a few weeks ago. And it's worth highlighting that under the Trump administration, the backlog of cases pending in the immigration courts has exploded to almost 1.3 million cases. That is an amazing number. In some jurisdictions, the wait to hear a case is 4 years, and there are cases that have been pending for more than 5 years. And this not only affects families trying to reunite, but students trying to study or train in the U.S., victims of crime who are working with law enforcement, and members of our military trying to adjust status. 1.3 million backlog.
God.
How will you address this backlog and increase the efficiency of the immigration courts?
When I went to immigration court, they literally just continued
problem.
every single thing out for 6
my,
months. They didn't do anything.
Pampered perch as an appellate judge who has a limited number of cases and weeks to study those and then weeks and weeks to write those. I can't imagine how judges can operate under the conditions that you describe and that I have heard even from other judges exist. When I get into the department, if I'm confirmed, I will certainly look into what can be done about this. I suppose this must mean an increase in the number of resources and judges. It must mean some ability to give to the judges to prioritize their cases. Even in our own appellate courts, we have developed ways in which we handle some cases more swiftly, and some cases take longer. Some cases are summarily resolved. Some require full opinions. Some way of evaluating this is required, but I can't give you any specific idea with respect to court administration, which I know something about, but not an enormous about. Until I have a chance to get into the department, if confirmed, and to understand what the cause of this huge backlog and number of cases is.
There is an executive office for immigration review that oversees these, but I think the really important thing is an acknowledgement that this kind of serious backlog has got to be addressed, and because lives are at stake here.
Oh, when she talks, I want to die. Night of Hope says, Mother effer discriminating against people based on whether or not they might spread a disease is a blanket excuse that can be used to deprive anyone of their right to be anywhere at any time, even if they've been tested. Are you insane? No, he's just a little old. Timothy Reaper says, time to send Drexel to Susan's place. Drex smash. Night of Hope says, imagine the third world giving more of a fuck about verifying votes than America. Corin42 says Hirono should get sacrificed by the population to appease the volcano gods constantly destroying the island in Minecraft. Porsky says, Dong, where's my automobile? Automobira. Othamer says, do you enjoy your audience getting yeeted? YouTube sure loves it. Dude, I've sent follow-ups to my YouTube partner person explaining that problem as well, which that seems to be limited to YouTube mobile. But it just, that's something like 3/4 of the viewers, so that's pretty important. Blackhall Manor says, I don't think I know anything about the eating of viewers to this stream. Captain Spire says, implicit bias is Ash Conformity Experiment 101. Automata says, yeah, YouTube just bumped me off your stream to the next video on the recommended list. Haven't had that happen before on a live stream. Still up. It did it the other day. I don't remember what day it was. It was Friday. It was Friday. And when it does it, I mean, it's devastating. It's devastating to the view count, to the people actually here watching. A lot of people don't realize what happened, and so then they don't come back. It's really, really frustrating. DCV Titan says, remember everyone, white supremacists are the cause of all problems. Let's just ignore July through November 2020. We should focus on January 6, 2021. DCV Titan, that's racist. They're simply responding to white supremacists for the first part of the year. Malik Fox and their jitters in view counts as YouTube quote unquote eliminates bots, which is nonsense. However, those tend to resolve quickly. So they pop down and pop back up every minute or so. Maybe every 4 or 5 minutes. And then there's the big like dips. But the view count updates every 15 to 30 seconds, something like that. Having the when the big hiccup occurred and kicked everybody off, we went from about 1,200 viewers down to 250, and only now is it getting back up towards 1,000. It's been great. Thank you. Andrew War Snowboard says, Twitch was broadcasting Metallica live from BlizzCon, but they muted themselves because of music they didn't own the rights to, folk music instead. Yeah, I heard about that. That's funny, at least. So, this is the fun thing that happens. I don't know what I would have done to piss off YouTube. Like I said, made YouTube a lot of money over the past couple years. So, let's see what their problem is. They don't ever tell me they have a problem, except this last time when they told me something ridiculous. But, anyway, use this to yell at YouTube says, keeps happening on YouTube mobile app. Chat's still going, but video feed ends, shows replay button. I exit out, go to your channel page, stream is there. I click, video feed is back on, but only lets me rewind to the point of last drop, rinse and repeat. I wish I had a better answer. I don't know what's been going on with YouTube doing that lately. Aiden, says this seems like such a bizarre thing for them to want to suppress. I really don't think it has anything to do with this subject at all. I don't know. Maybe it's entirely possible that I recently did something to piss them off, and that's what it is, but I have no idea. Say, guys, I'll be right back. Since I missed the last break as I was screaming at my computer, I'll be back in just a minute, okay? All right, I'm back. Back. I got some gumbo. Because, you know. Any plans for a streaming alternative? Maybe Rumble. I don't know. Not really. There's no one who does it well. Joseph Kerwin says, I'm using YouTube Vanced for as a mobile YouTube app. It seems to be more stable and has a neat picture-in-picture feature. Just a little bit of work to install. Never heard of it. Corin42 says, I rewound the stream and am donating to report my findings. In the 3 questions of Senator Hirono asked, the responses had a total of 79 uhs or ums contained within them. 21 for question 1, 20 for question 2, and a resounding 38 for question 3. Mark Witt, it's primarily chicken and sausage gumbo. There are some shrimp in there because one of my kids really likes shrimp, but it is not a seafood gumbo generally. Oh, hi, it's Will. Says, Nick, theoretically speaking, would you trust someone holding a political rally who had their bank accounts frozen by the FBI? Plot twist, the organizer wants attendees to send cash and checks directly to them by mail. I don't know. Would I trust someone holding a political rally who had their bank accounts frozen by the FBI? Sure. That doesn't make me automatically distrust them holding a rally. Would I send them money? No. Who is that? Out of curiosity. I gotta check something real quick. We gotta hear something. About... I gotta listen to... Oh. Sorry. Biden's sitting here dropping the hard R at the conference. Woo! Oh boy. Not good. Not good, Biden. Fuentes? Oh, Fuentes is holding the rally. Fuentes had his account frozen by the FBI? Are they so scared of Nick Fuentes? Yeah, I'll cover the Biden thing on tonight's live stream. I don't have an easy way to pull it up on this one. Tell chat to hit like. Oh, hey, chat. Hit like or else you love Susan. Or something. Do I get to threaten it? Threaten? Boob Rancher. Yes, it's very good. This is like my 15th bowl of this stuff. I made it yesterday. Is having a hearing ableist to deaf people? Yes. Yes. We're about to hit 1,000 likes. What should I take a drink of, guys? What should I take a drink of? Rider's Tears? I think I only have 2 of them left. Or 1 of them. No, I have 2 of them. So we've got Copper Pot, Rider's Tears, Irish Whiskey. This was sent to me by a very good friend. When that friend was in Ireland, doing a little voice acting appearance. Some of you have heard of this friend. Hmm. Drinking from this little tiny bottle is terrible. La Macaw, Ty Beard isn't a voice actor. Here we go. He does have incredibly gay pants, Kingly Gaming. That is true. Insaniac. Yeah, in New Orleans. Where are you, brother? Depends where you are as to where you can get a gumbo. I did. I think it's really racist that they didn't include Chun-Li in Mortal Kombat. Definitely violence against women. We need Hirono to investigate. Let me put this down quickly. Now that they're back. Is it a binder full of women? Oh, I muted him. Shit.
And to get those answers. So
There we go.
6 months
Sorry.
from now, I don't blame you. It's the fact that the Trump people didn't answer it.
I would like to keep the blame on my predecessor.
Okay.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. And then I'm going to say something about your answering questions for us. And this goes back now that I'm ranking member. I want to give you a quote that I said to Senator Sessions when he was sitting where you are. And if Senator Feinstein contacts you, do not use this excuse, as so many people use, that if you are not a chairman of a committee, you do not have to answer the questions. I
What?
want her questions answered just like you would answer mine. So I hope that whether I'm ranking member or chairman of the committee, you will help me get answers to the questions, and I hope Senator Durbin will do the same thing.
What?
I will not use any excuse to not answer your question,
Thank
Senator.
you. And then the other thing is, I don't want to dwell on Durham, but several people have asked you, and you've given the same answer, and I understand why you give that answer, but would it be impossible for you to have some sort of a briefing on Durham between now and the time you get our written answers back, so you could give us a more definitive answer?
So I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, I assume, among other things, that the Durham investigation.
I'll accept your answer.
Okay.
You don't need to go any further.
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's go to a subject of domestic terrorism. And that, obviously in a democracy, we need to be able to disagree with each other without violence.
What's a
Political
geocracy?
extremism, the willingness to use violence to advocate one's political views on either side, is a threat to our democracy. The Capitol attack shows us that very directly. I think you've answered this question, and so just a very short answer. I think you've assured all of us that the Justice Department has all the necessary resources to investigate and prosecute all cases connected to the attack on the United States Capitol.
I can't yet say we have all the resources. What I said was I would look into the question of whether I just don't know.
Okay.
But we certainly have authorities to look into it. Whether we have the money and the person power, I just don't know yet.
Okay. Then likewise, in the previous year, there have been numerous attacks, not only on other institutions of the government like the White House and the federal courthouse in Portland, but on hundreds, if not thousands, of police officers who were injured, as well as on fellow citizens and their businesses, particularly small businesses. The Justice Department opened over 300 domestic terrorism cases due to that violence and started an anti-government extremism task force. So I hope you could commit absolutely.
Wait, they started a task force
for the
to commit
Capitol
anti-government
rioters,
extremism?
that you will see those investigations of the 2020 riots and continuing Antifa riots in the Pacific Northwest through to the very end.
The Justice Department, I think Director Ray said it exactly right, which is we investigate violence. We don't care about ideology.
You don't,
There are
huh?
investigations going on like those, and of course they're going to continue.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And then
Remember that. Those
taking off a
investigations
little
will
bit what
continue
you
forever.
referred to what the
Doesn't mean they'll
FBI
turn into
said.
a prosecution
Former
ever.
Attorney General Barr noted that the FBI, while it had robust programs for white supremacism and militia extremism, lacked a similar infrastructure for anarchist extremism cases. Former acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary Wolf stated that this may have contributed to law enforcement being blindsided by the civil unrest that began in 2020. So I hope that I can get you to say that you'd be willing to review your anarchist extremism program for weaknesses and fixing those weaknesses based upon what Barr said, that the FBI said that they had better programs to go after white supremacy than they did other anarchist extremism.
Anarchist.
I think we need to go after violence from whatever direction, left, right, up, down. It doesn't make any difference. We need to go after that. I think what Director Ray had said was what he was most concerned about was the rise of white supremacist extremism as an element of domestic terrorism. But it doesn't matter what direction it comes from. It doesn't matter what the ideology is. We have to investigate it.
I guess my time's up.
CH, yeah, I'm back up. I'm done being a
I have
scam.
a lot of questions for answer in writing.
Fair enough.
YouTube is misrepresenting and lying. I don't
wanna
know what
try to
scam. Whatever scam I'm running, it
give an
didn't make me any
indication of the
money.
Sequence. Dick Blumenthal is going to be next.
Like if I'm going to run a
And then on
scam, I'm going to
the
make
Republican side,
millions.
It's going to be John Cornyn. Then it'll either be Senator Ossoff or Senator Booker. They can arm wrestle.
Look at him hanging that,
They'll have to make that
hanging
decision.
that mask out of his
And then
off his
Senator
ear like
Cotton,
a.
I believe you were the next
like a some
arrival.
sort of weird.
This has become kind of a little difficult to predict the sequence. I want to make sure you see it coming.
I would never want a rookie senator to go between Cotton and Cornyn, so I'll go there.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Oh God!
I want to pursue a couple of the questions that I was asking when we ran out of time. Just to say,
Dick Blumenthal
that
really
on the
needs to
issue
retire.
of climate change, President Biden, as a candidate, committed to hold accountable the oil and gas industry for any lies or fraud they had committed in denying the effects of climate change. And I hope you'll take that into consideration in determining what the Department of Justice will do in those kinds of cases, pursuing any kind of pollution or climate change or lies in connection with the oil and gas industry. And just to kind of ask a threshold question, do you have any doubt that human beings are a cause of climate change?
No doubt at all.
Thank you.
There you go.
You may.
That wasn't a trick question, I guess.
It wasn't a trick question. I asked
All
it
you need
because,
to know right
the
there.
last major nominee
No
before
doubt
this
at
committee
all.
back in September, it was the Supreme Court nomination. Seemed to have some trouble with that question, but I'm glad you don't. Let me move to this.
Man doesn't
the
know
issue of
literally anything
racial
about any
discrimination,
topic,
which has
but
been
he's
pursued, and I
dead sure,
really
as
welcome your
not a chemist,
very
not a scientist, that's
sincere
why he
and
went to law
passionate
school.
commitment to ending racism and
He
racial
knows.
justice.
He knows for sure.
We're in the midst of a racial justice movement right now. One of the areas that most concerns me is holding accountable public officials when they violate individual rights and liberties. As you know, Section 242 makes it a federal crime to willfully deprive a person of their constitutional rights while acting under color of law, but prosecutors have to show that that public official had a specific intent to deprive constitutional rights, which, as you also know, is a pretty high bar. I believe, and I have advocated, that we, in effect, lower the state of mind requirement in Section 242 from willfully to knowingly or with reckless disregard, because this stringent mens rea requirement makes Section 242 prosecutions rare or impossible. And so I hope you agree that we need to adopt measures that will enable criminal accountability where all of the elements of the crime are committed and the mens rea intent requirement
You want some
can,
mens rea.
in fact, fit the crime.
Well, what I can agree is that I'll consult with the career lawyers in the Civil Rights Division, who are the ones who would be bringing these cases and who have brought them in the past. I
They
honestly
brought
just
them
don't
in the
know.
future.
I know everyone says that they're very difficult to make. On the other hand, in the Clinton administration, we did successfully make quite a number of those cases. So I'd like to know from talking to them what kinds of changes might be necessary in the statute and what the consequences of changing the mens rea requirement would be.
Thank you.
Massive.
I'd also like
Massive
to ask
consequences.
you, about Section 230. I've proposed various measures, one of them actually adopted in law and signed by the president, that imposes accountability on the big tech platforms for certain kinds of really horrific material, human trafficking under SESTA, and Senator Graham and I have
Doesn't
led
seem
an
to stop
effort
Twitter
that's
from
called the
supporting
Internet
human
Act
trafficking.
to hold accountable
Or YouTube, for that matter.
the tech companies for spreading child sexual abuse material.
How have you held Twitter and Facebook accountable
think
for
reform
spreading
of
child
Section
sexual abuse
230
material?
long overdue.
Blumenthal.
I led these kinds of targeted and indeed bipartisan efforts to revise Section 230.
They're the largest
to hold big tech
Twitter
accountable.
and Facebook are the largest
And I
purveyors
hope
of child
that you
sexual
will
material
consider
in the
joining with
entire
Congress
world.
in those kinds of
Have had zero
targeted, deliberate
consequences.
efforts to reform Section 230, which no longer fits the world that currently it applies to.
So I don't know that much about 230 except for the case I mentioned that I worked on myself, which was a pretty direct application of the provision. I know that a number of members, including you, spoke to me about this in our meetings, and I know people have different views about how it should be altered. I really would have to study that, but I'm very eager to study that. There's no doubt the internet has changed from when 230 was originally adopted. So I would be eager and interested in studying it and speaking with the members about it.
He has no
Thank you very
idea.
much.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. Senator
No
Cornyn.
idea.
Judge, are you familiar with Title 42, which is a public health measure which restricts traffic across the international border as a public health measure to mitigate the spread of COVID-19? Are you familiar with that?
I don't know the statute specifically. I know that there
No, why
must
would
be provisions that do that, but I don't know the statute, no.
Well, one of the things I hear from the Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection is they're fearful that when the current Title 42 restrictions on cross-border traffic are lifted, there will be no plan in its place and certainly no transition to get back to normal cross-border trade, traffic, and visit. And this is a huge issue that I've raised with Director Mayorkas and others as well, and I just want to make sure that's on your radar screen. But I also want to take up what
Senator Hirono was talking about the 1.2, 1.3 million asylum cases that are backlogged. There's no way that the United States government is ever going to clear that backlog. But I'd want to suggest to you that that is part of a conscious strategy by the cartels who make a lot of money moving people across the border into the United States along with drugs, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's, as I say, drugs, whether it's just migrants who are trying to flee poor economic circumstances and dangerous conditions in their home country. But if the Biden administration is not going to enforce current laws with regard to immigration, and there are many people suggesting, including the nominee for Health and Human Services, that we ought to give free health care to people who are not legally in the country. All of this is going to be a huge incentive for more and more people to immigrate illegally into the United States. And obviously the Department of Justice has a very important role to play there. But I want to suggest this is not an accident. This is not a coincidence. This is part of a conscious strategy by the cartels who are enriched by each and every person, each and every load of drugs that comes across the border. And I hope that you will commit to working with me and all the other members of Congress to try to address this humanitarian and public health crisis in addition to the other aspects of immigration. Will you agree to do that?
Certainly, I will commit to working with members of Congress to address the public health crisis. I have to say, I wasn't aware that the cartels were doing this, but this seems like something that the Justice Department needs to focus on.
Well, at different times, it's referred to as transnational criminal organizations.
What are you aware
cartels. Basically, it's for people who are engaged in criminal enterprises for money. That's why they do it. They care nothing about the people that they leave, some to die en route to the United States. All they care about is money. So I appreciate your willingness to work with me and others about that.
This man is going to be
China
the chief law enforcement
and
officer
Russia,
of the
to a
United
lesser
States. He
extent,
doesn't even know what cartels do.
Perfected cyber espionage on the United States for many reasons, but in part to steal our intellectual property. The billions of dollars that Congress appropriates for development of the next generation stealth fighter to nuclear modernization, you name it. If the Russians and the Chinese can get it without making those investments, then the years-long delay necessary to roll them out, they have a tremendous advantage in terms of competing with us economically and also militarily. 80% of all economic espionage cases brought by the Department of Justice involve the communist China. And,
Chi-coms.
there are at least some nexus to China.
Charlie's
about 60% of all
up at the trees.
trade theft cases. I've told people that Director Wray, who's a pretty stoic individual, gets positively animated when he begins to talk about the role that China is playing and its rivalry with the United States, both from an economic standpoint, and if you look at the South China Sea and some of its aggressive and boisterous actions there, with the potential for military conflict in the future. This is our number one
Animated is not a word.
I believe, today as we speak here. Do you share my concerns about China's role as a rival in the world, what they're doing in terms of stealing intellectual property, what that means to us economically and from a national security perspective?
Well, Senator, I don't have any inside information with respect to what the intelligence agencies know, but I've read quite a lot about this, and it seems quite clear to me that the Chinese are involved in
Animated does have an Urban Dictionary entry, which probably does apply.
We're in an age where individual espionage prosecutions don't quite cut it, given the internet and how so much can be stolen in just a single hack. So this has to be an all-of-government response to this problem. There has to be a forward look as to what's happening to us. There has to be a defensive look. I know that that's the purpose of Cyber Command. That's certainly something that the DNI is very concerned about, and then, of course, the FBI with respect to enforcement. But this is a dangerous problem for all the reasons you said, and it requires a whole of government response.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Cornyn. Based on who is present and apparently interested, it'll be Senator Booker, Senator Cotton, Senator Ossoff, Senator Hawley. Those are the ones I see. So, Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for the grace of Senator Ossoff for allowing me to go before him. I'd love to just jump in.
If he didn't, he
real
would have
quick,
been
if I may.
racist.
And, a lot has been talk about your incredible work with the Oklahoma City bombing, but I'm also aware that you have a long record of working on domestic terrorism in pretty significant ways. In the mid-1990s, in a response to a wave of bombings and arson attacks against black churches in the South and other houses of worship, the Clinton administration formed a national task force where you and your leadership, along with others, helped to make this Justice Department priority, resulting in several hundred investigations and arrests. And I just really appreciate the totality of your record on fighting domestic terrorism. I do just really quickly.
Oh, hey, do you guys want me to stream CPAC?
Just in terms of proportionality.
Trump's going to speak at CPAC. I think it's later this week or next week.
We've seen just this rise
weekend, maybe?
of right-wing terrorist attacks in our country. In fact, since 9/11, the majority of domestic terrorist attacks have been right-wing extremist groups. The majority of those have been white supremacist groups. And I'm just hoping, and again, you're not in the position, God willing, you will be, but just the proportionality of the resources we are directing towards trying to stop the scourge of domestic terrorism. Is this something that you will look at in terms of the degree of the resources of the agency?
Yeah, as I say, I think the first thing I should do as part of my briefings on the Capitol bombing are briefings with Director Wray as to where he sees the biggest threat
bombing.
And whether the resources of the Bureau and of the Department are allocated towards the biggest threat.
Did the Capitol get bombed? Did I miss that?
We do have to be careful across the board. We can never, let somebody sneak around the end because we're not focusing, but we also have to allocate our resources towards the biggest threat.
Great. And I'd like to shift back to marijuana. Our earlier conversation, we were talking about the systemic racism there that I've watched tons of friends in elite colleges.
He's watched tons of episodes of Friends.
Arrested for marijuana, while the inner city black and brown community I live into, it's a much different much different set of laws applying to them. But I actually want to get to the good news, I think, in the United States of America is that red states, blue states, America general, if you want to call those states that way, or American states are moving towards more and more legalization, medical marijuana, loosening up of laws, decriminalization. It's an amazing thing, but the federal government is out of step with that, right, as of now, and I hope to work in a bipartisan way to see if we can advance the federal government, maybe to delist the legislation, think of some restorative justice elements. Just today, New Jersey signed its first major effort at legalization and restorative justice. But one thing that was done by the Obama administration was putting forward the Cole Memorandum, as I'm sure you're aware, but Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded the Cole Memorandum, which gave guidance to U.S. attorneys that the federal marijuana prohibition should not be enforced in states that have legalized marijuana in some form.
He rescinded it, but it didn't do anything. They're not
the
prosecuting
guidance
people in
Cole
Colorado.
Memorandum to deprioritize marijuana enforcement should be reinstated? That is, should the Justice Department respect states' decisions on marijuana policy?
So I don't have every element of the Cole Memorandum in mind, but I do remember it, and I have read it. This is a question of the prioritization of our resources and prosecutorial discretion. It does not seem to me a useful use of limited resources that we have to be pursuing
He was prepped for this question.
that have legalized.
He doesn't know about cartels, but he knows about the fucking Cole
the use of
Memorandum.
marijuana, either medically or otherwise. I don't think that's a useful use. I do think we need to be sure that there are no end runs around the state laws that criminal enterprises are doing. So that kind of enforcement should be continued. But I don't think it's a good use of our resources where states have already authorized it, and it only confuses people, obviously, within the state.
So really quickly, the violence against black trans Americans is unconscionable, with many murders every single year. The bullying and violence against a lot of trans children,
Black trans Americans
a third
specifically?
of LGBTQ American children report missing school because of fear of violence and intimidation. Is this something that you will make a priority to protect all children from
Who's
violence,
killing the black
discrimination,
trans people?
particularly in this case, transgender children and transgender children? And would you also commit to taking seriously the targeting of transgender adults, specifically with the trend we're seeing with the alarming numbers of murders of black transgender women?
These are hate crimes. And,
Who's killing the black
it's the
trans
job of
women?
the Justice Department to stop this.
Is it black trans men or black non-trans men? Is it white men? Who is it? I'm genuinely curious. I have no idea.
The special litigation unit in the Civil Rights Division is intended to do. There is the Shepherd-Byrd Act, which was particularly aimed at this, and I think it's, I'm not sure whether it needs broadening, but it's clear to me that this kind of hateful activity has to stop. And yes, we need to put resources into it.
Thank you for your time. I look forward to voting for your confirmation, and I'm going to stop here because I do not want to make Tom Cotton mad at me.
There are 44 transgender or non-conforming people fatally shot or killed by other violent means in 2020, the majority of which were black and Latinx transgender women.
Hawley, and now Senator Whitehouse is going to make a return. Senator Cotton?
Judge, I want to return to where we stopped this morning, the question of racial equality, specifically race discrimination in higher education. Last year, the Department of Justice sued Yale University for discriminating against students on the basis of race. Based on Yale's own data, if you look at one of its top academic categories when you control for academic achievement, the admission rates by racial category were as follows. Asian Americans, 6%. White applicants, 8%. Hispanics, 21%. African Americans, 49%. Do you think that evidence suggests discrimination based on race in Yale's admissions process?
My best recollection is that between my nomination and now, the department has made a decision about that.
The case was voluntarily dismissed on February 3rd. It's no longer a pending case.
So my recollection is correct. So these kind of cases obviously depend on application of the Supreme Court's opinion in the Gritter case and the Fisher case. And they require a lot of factual development and examination of the facts. These cases do not only depend on disparate statistics, but on all the factors the Supreme Court instructed the lower courts and the government as to what kinds of affirmative action in higher education are permissible and which ones aren't. So I honestly can't draw any conclusions without knowing the facts of the case.
So some of that Supreme Court case law about racial discrimination in higher education says that race can only be used as a plus factor. It can't be decisive in practice. It can't be a defining feature. It can't be the predominant factor. When Asian American kids are 8 times less likely to be admitted in the same band of academic achievement, you don't think that at least suggests a facial case of racial discrimination?
Well, I think that's the question that you look at for the underlying facts to know. I don't know
it's all
exactly
just
the words of the
coincidence,
Supreme Court
brother.
opinions, but they seem pretty much exactly, what you just said. You can't have a rigid quota. You can't have a fixed. This was the consequence of the Gratz case, which was the companion case to Gritter. Gritter was the University of Michigan Law School. Gratz was University of Michigan as a university. With respect to Gritter, the court said it was a holistic approach and was permissible. With respect to Gratz, it said it was a fixed ratio or a fixed number and not permissible. But those are things you find out by discovery in the case and examination of what the actual
Just say it looks kind of weird
of the university were, and I have no idea what they were.
Judge, did anyone in the Biden administration consult with you about the decision to drop the lawsuit against Yale University?
No, I have assiduously kept out of those. It's not appropriate for me to be examining anything like that unless you confirm me.
Will the Department of Justice, under your leadership, pursue cases of obvious racial discrimination in higher education?
Well, if you put it that way, the answer is, of course, yes. Obvious.
Well, I think this presents an obvious case of discrimination against Asian Americans. I suspect some Asian American parents and their kids are a little disappointed in those answers, Judge.
Probably.
I want to turn to the.
I just want to say I'm only giving the answer to what the Supreme Court said the law was. I can't do any better than that.
eight
can.
times less likely to be admitted.
My answer was you have to look at the facts inside.
Okay, I want to turn to another very important topic, which is the rising
Not
rates
even
of
gonna
violent
look
crime
at
in
it.
the country.
You
According
just
to the
said.
FBI's crime statistics, only 45% of violent crimes in this country result in an arrest. Would it be better or worse if 100% of violent crimes in this country resulted in arrest and prosecution instead of just 45%?
Where's he going with this?
Would be better if you gave if the Congress gave the department enough money to arrest every single person. I assume you're talking both about state crimes and federal crimes.
That's according, yes, to Department of Justice, FBI crime statistics. Only
So those
45%.
are almost all, or a large percentage, are talking about local crimes. So
Do you
yes,
think the,
better
department? Do you think the department today solves too many crimes or prosecutes too many criminals?
the Justice Department.
Yes.
I think it may bring charges in areas which are not a good allocation of its resources, but I don't think it has sufficient resources to, and probably never will, to pursue every crime. That seems impossible.
He sounds like the
One
guy
final
trying
point,
to
Judge, I just wanna
convince
get on the record.
Arnold
We
that
spoke about
he's
this last week
in
our
the
telephone
dream
call,
world in Total Recall.
about the importance of state and local law enforcement to work together in a collaborative and cooperative fashion with the Department of Justice, both its local U.S. attorneys and the law enforcement agencies that you oversee. I was glad to know that you agree with me. Those partnerships
You're here in
are vital
recall.
to reduce crime and keep our community safe.
You need
I
to
just
take
wanted to
this
give you
pill.
the chance
It'll
to
bring
put
you
that
out
on
of
the record
recall,
today.
and everything will be just
absolutely.
fine.
My experience in Oklahoma City was close cooperation with the DA's office, the local police there, and with the governor and with the state police. I think these joint task forces are an exceedingly good idea. They're
By the
a
way,
force
this is
multiplier.
why
So I'm
even
completely on board
attorneys
with this. Yes, sir.
should always be
Judge.
wary of an
Senator
attorney
Ossoff?
asking them questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi again, Judge Garland. I want to return to the question
Stop.
of
Stop.
the department's authorities and mission to defend voting rights. And note that Sunday would have been Congressman John Lewis's 81st birthday. And as you know, he committed his life and indeed nearly lost his life in the struggle for voting rights. But as we speak, Georgia's state legislature is considering legislation that would make it harder for Georgians to vote. For example, to end Sunday early voting, which is used heavily by black and working class voters, to cut the window during which voters can participate via absentee ballot, which would make it harder for seniors to vote. And I'm not asking you to comment on these specific bills, but
Yeah, you
what
are.
I'm hoping you can provide is an assurance that the Department of Justice will diligently and fully enforce constitutional and statutory guarantees of the rights to vote.
I give you my complete assurance. Yes, Senator.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to discuss with you resources available for public defenders' offices around the country. And a visit to a municipal court in any major American city will reveal that a steady stream of low-income defendants lacking the resources to hire their own attorneys are often represented by overworked and under-resourced public defenders.
This is one of the two senators in Georgia.
Which contributes to class
new ones
and
for
race
the Democrats.
bias in the justice system, and in my view is an affront to the constitutional guarantee of due process as well as of equal protection. So will you work with my office and this committee to determine whether grant programs which may already exist at the department to support local public defenders' offices or which may need to be created can be considered in legislation that this committee and the Senate may consider?
I will, Senator. There is no equal justice in the United States unless everybody has equal access to justice. My own experience, our federal public defender's office is terrific. Needs resources. The federal public defenders across the country, I've tried my best when I was in an administrative position to provide as many resources as possible. The same for our lawyers who volunteer under the Criminal Justice Act. The difference between having an excellent lawyer and not can make all the difference in the world. And I think we should give all the resources that we can. And with respect to the local courts and local public defenders, would have to be through grant programs, but of course, To the extent Congress is willing, I'm strongly in favor.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and I look forward to working with you, I hope.
DCV Titan says he already hit like
on those
before.
grant programs. And finally,
But was that enough? That was enough of a
to
threat to make me
the
hit it again.
discussion
Hope
we
that
had
helps.
Earlier about pattern or practice investigations. And I just want
Nothing
to
Raven
urge
says,
you
what's with the racist,
that
sexist
if you
hearing?
are
Why no
confirmed
Chun
as you
Li?
take this office, and there will be so many
question.
demands on
Physicality
your time,
channel
your
says, Nick,
attention, and important
Quaid, I
missions
got
for the
5
department
kids
to
to
fight violent
feed.
crime and to defend our national security, that you personally exercise leadership within the department to
Automata
ensure
says, so
that
here's
the
my
Civil
question.
Rights
Why was
Division's
Lewis's
mission is
funeral called an
elevated and
essential
emphasized,
function
and
exempted
that
from
you
a travel
come to this
quarantine when
committee
other
to
families
seek
were
and
denied
secure
this?
any resources that you need to make that real? And just to illustrate why I believe that's so important, the South Fulton Jail in my home state of Georgia has been known to the public for years
Okay.
to have
I'm here in
appalling
Fulton Jail.
conditions for incarcerated people. And actually, in the last month, a federal court ordered changes to practices within the jail. But it was after years of litigation. The U.S. Attorney's Office did file a brief in the case, but the litigation was brought by independent nonprofit plaintiffs.
Timothy Reaper says, did you hear about a guy named Moorhead?
For changes to be
He has a
ordered by
brilliant
federal court. I'm
plan
gonna
to
read
lower
you
the murder rate in
a quote
Baltimore.
from the plaintiff's
Pay
brief
killers not to kill
to
people.
illustrate the conditions
Apparently,
in
they've
this
already
jail.
tried it in
And I wanna
California.
warn the
Shocking,
public
I
viewing
know.
this on television that the material is graphic. Quote, the cells were covered in bodily fluids, rust,
Ugh.
and mold. In these conditions, the inmates deteriorated, leaving them incoherent, screaming unintelligibly, laying catatonic, banging their heads against walls, and repeatedly attempting suicide. This refers to the solitary confinement of women with severe psychiatric disorders in the South Fulton Jail in Georgia. And these conditions are not unique to this facility. So I want to urge you and ask you one more time, please, respectfully, Judge Garland, your commitment to elevate this mission within the department and to work to secure the human rights of incarcerated people and the American public with all of the power you'll have in this position.
This is, of course, when a result
my
of closing
commitment.
down
The
sanitariums and
Civil Rights
asylums
Division has responsibilities
and putting those people in jails instead, where they don't really belong.
And so is quite capable of pursuing these kinds of cases. I took to heart what the chairman said with respect to the role that Robert Kennedy played when he was the Attorney General. And I regard my responsibilities with respect to the Civil Rights Division as at the top of my major priorities lists. So you have my commitment to do everything I can in this area.
Thank you. And just with the chairman's indulgence, Judge, will you commit to reviewing any materials that are sent to you by Congress or by entities such as the NAACP or the Southern Center for Human Rights where it pertains to conditions of incarceration?
So, so that I have some time to be able to read everything that I need to read. If it's all right with you, I'll commit to being sure that the head of the Civil Rights Division and the Associate Attorney General, Ms. Clark and Ms. Gupta, who are directly responsible, do that and then brief me about it. I will, to the extent possible, read them myself, but I've already committed to reading a 400-page document, and there are only so many hours in my day.
Understand, the department's conditions, what I'm looking for. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Thanks,
Hawley.
Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Garland, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the law enforcement challenges at the border, which I know a number of other members have brought up with you.
He's
Just
never met a
fundamental
border.
question.
He doesn't know what a border is.
Do you believe that illegal entry at America's border should remain a crime?
Ooh.
Well, I haven't thought about that question. Just haven't thought about that question. I think that, the president has made clear that we are a country with the borders and with a concern about national security. I don't know of a proposal to decriminalize but still make it unlawful to enter. I just don't know the answer to that question. I haven't thought about it.
Will you continue to prosecute unlawful border crossings?
Well, this is again a question of allocation of resources. the department will prevent unlawful crossing. I don't know. I have to admit, I just don't know exactly what the conditions are and how this is done.
He doesn't know about illegal border
I don't know what the
crossing.
current program even is with respect to this. If there, so I assume that the answer would be yes, but I don't know what the issues around surrounding it.
Let me ask you about the guidelines on asylum eligibility, the issued as part
Hey,
of the
here's an
Executive
answer
Office
for
of
that.
Immigration
Yes,
Review.
Congress made it illegal. It's
your
illegal.
predecessors have issued quite a number
We
of
should
guidelines
prosecute
about
it.
asylum
Done.
eligibility. Several
Next
senators,
question.
Senator Herone, I think Senator Cornyn talked about the very significant backlog that we have currently in asylum cases. Will you continue to use, keep in force the current guidelines on asylum eligibility, or do you anticipate changing them?
Again, given my
He's never heard of
professional,
asylum.
Occupation, I've had no experience whatsoever with the guidelines, so I can't give you a direct answer to that question. Asylum is part of American law, and the Justice Department and the State Department have an
Asylum is part of
obligation,
more than American law, by the way.
to apply that law. I don't know what the guidelines are that you're talking about, and I don't know even about the rescissions of guidelines that you're talking about.
Literally, this guy has no idea.
Will you, if confirmed, I'm sure that you'll be reviewing this and considering these questions. Will you pledge to keep us fully posted as you do so?
Yeah, if there's a change in the government policy, if I'm confirmed, of course, there will be a public change because you can't apply those kind of guidelines without making them public.
Let me turn to the subject of antitrust. I heard your answer to Senator Blackburn about the ongoing Google antitrust prosecution. I believe your answer was you did not anticipate any changes in that ongoing prosecution, that the case would go forward. Did I hear you correctly? Is that right?
I don't want to talk about a pending case because it is, after all, pending case, and that's just what a judge can't talk about. But
Oh, he loves
it's
being
true
able
with
to say
most
that.
of our investigations, I will, when I get in, if I'm confirmed, I will examine them. But I don't have any reason to think that I would stop that kind of investigation.
Recently, various news outlets have reported that Susan Davies is being considered to lead the DOJ antitrust division. Susan Davies, of course, has defended Facebook from federal antitrust laws. Facebook has been another target of antitrust scrutiny. Do you think it's appropriate to have someone who is a defender of these massive corporations leading the antitrust division?
Well, let me say a number of things in response to this. First of all, the department has recusal rules, which prevents somebody who had a role from taking a role in a case like that. Susan Davies is a fantastic
She's going to
lawyer,
head up the
woman of
department.
Enormous integrity. And I have every confidence that were she in that division, she would proceed as completely appropriate. But it turns out that the press reports are completely incorrect. So
she's not under consideration.
No, not that I know of. No.
Oh, and is not going to be, to the best of your knowledge. I assume it'd be your decision.
I don't think either she or I have aspirations for her to be in the antitrust division. So I'm not exactly sure where this came from, but she is a woman of remarkable ability.
Heather Nemmer says, Merrick, dude, these are areas you should have known would come up. Why did you not prep? Too used to having your clerk do your reading and thinking of you. Maybe they should have your clerk up for confirmation. Probably would do a better job.
Judgment. So if she were in a position, any position, anywhere in the department, she would know when to recuse or not. But this particular issue, she's not, as far as I know, she's not going to be in the antitrust division, not because she wanted to be or I wanted her to be in there and because somebody said she couldn't.
Good. Well, I think that's news, I think, and welcome news. And I just want to register my own point of view here, which is I think that the recusal or not, the message it would send, the Google case is perhaps the most significant antitrust case the department has undertaken since Microsoft. Easily, maybe more significant than that, because Google, frankly, is significantly more powerful than Microsoft was. The message it would send to have a lawyer defend
the Microsoft antitrust case is a joke compared to Google.
Or why this message was being sent. But there is no, I don't have any intention of this, but I am confident that had this been the case, this would not be a problem. Unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of the best antitrust lawyers in the country have some involvement one way or another in some part of high tech, and we can't exclude every single good lawyer from being able to be in the division. But that's not an issue. Nothing you need to be concerned about.
Don't worry your pretty little head about
Mr.
it, Holly.
Cruz?
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Judge Garland, I want to go back to the topic of protecting the Department of Justice from political influence and being weaponized politically. A number of Senate Democrats at this hearing have used the opportunity to cast aspersions to the job Bill Barr did as Attorney General. I think those aspersions are false. I think he showed enormous courage in fighting to defend the rule of law. But Bill Barr, when explicitly asked about whether he would terminate Robert Mueller at his confirmation hearing, the same situation you find yourself, he said he would not terminate him absent, quote, good cause. Are you willing to meet the same standard of integrity that Bill Barr demonstrated? And will you make that same commitment to this committee that you will not terminate Mr. Durham absent good cause?
What I've said to committee and
nope.
is that
to
get information about this investigation, which I do not have here. I understand that a decision has been made to keep him in place, and I have absolutely no reason to doubt that that was the right decision.
Why can't you say without good cause?
In place.
Just say
but
yeah.
I can't go any further without learning the facts of the investigation and what the status is.
Then you'd have good
Garland,
cause.
With all due respect, and I recognize you've been a judge for 23, 24 years, judicial nominees sit in that chair and decline to answer just about every question senators pose them, as saying, well, as a judge, I can't commit how I would rule on any given case, and that's appropriate. You're not nominated to be a judge in this position. You are nominated to an executive position, and you're a constitutional scholar. You understand fully well the difference between attorney general versus an Article III judge. Bill Barr didn't know the details of the Mueller investigation at the time, but he knew that Bob Mueller was investigating President Trump, that it was highly politically sensitive. And so to show his integrity and commitment to being nonpartisan, he said he wouldn't terminate Mueller absent good cause. You have the opportunity to do the same thing. The investigation into Durham is highly political. It potentially implicates Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And I just want to be clear, you're refusing to give that same commitment. You want to keep the options open to terminate the investigation.
Look, I'm not refusing to give that commitment because
you refuse to give the commitment.
I'm telling you what I think an attorney general ought to do, which is to look at the facts before making a decision. I'm also telling you that I will never make a decision in the department based on politics or on partisanship. So whatever decision I were to make, it would not be based on that. And all I can ask you to do is trust me based on a record of my 24 years as a judge, my entire career before that as a prosecutor, and my life before that. That's my record of integrity, and that's what you have before you.
So a similar line of questions that you were asked concerned the Google antitrust investigation. And Google, big tech as a whole, contributed over $15 million to the Joe Biden campaign. They're enormously important Democratic donors. There will be enormous political pressure to abandon that case against Google. Can you give this committee assurances that you can stand up to that political pressure just because Democratic fundraisers want to be lenient on Google, that the Department of Justice will not give in to that pressure?
Woo!
So, Senator Cruz, I'm old enough to remember when there was a political effort to end the case in the antitrust case in the Justice Department against ITT, which gives you an idea of how old this is, that there is no ITT anymore, the International Telephone and Telegraph Company. This, if I'm not wrong, this was one of the paragraphs in the indictment, the proposed indictment, impeachment
you just say yeah.
President Nixon, I think, but it was around the same time. And it had to do with a partisan effort to influence the Justice Department.
He's burning Ted Cruz's minutes here.
I grew up knowing that this is not something that is permissible for the Justice Department to do. And my whole life has been in looking at Ed Levy and Watergate, post-Watergate attorneys general who stood up to that kind of stuff. And I can assure you that I don't care what kind of donor talks to me about what of anything. I don't expect to talk
Not
to
the donor,
anybody.
buddy, it's your
I
boss.
have no conflicts. I don't own any Google stock, and I will do whatever is the right thing, and I don't own any stock, or I won't once, if I'm...
Let me ask two very quick questions, because my time is expiring.
Yeah.
Number one, you voted to rehear the Heller case, or actually the Parker case, en banc.
I did.
I argued the Parker case in the D.C. Circuit. As Attorney General, will the Department of Justice argue for the Supreme Court to overturn Heller versus District of Columbia?
Look, the department
they will.
Makes all kinds of judgments like that.
They absolutely will.
I can't promise, but I find it hard to believe that the department could think that there was any possibility of overturning the Heller case.
Okay, and then the final one, with the chairman's indulgence, because I'm at the end of my time.
Yeah.
9 senators wrote a letter to Chairman Durbin asking this committee to investigate Governor Andrew Cuomo's policies concerning COVID and sending COVID-positive individuals into nursing homes. A senior aide of his admitted to a cover-up to hide information from the Department of Justice. You've committed to a number of investigations here at this hearing today. Will you commit to investigating the extent to which the government of New York broke laws or covered up their policies concerning COVID-positive patients in nursing homes?
With all of these investigations, the Justice Department is open to evidence of fraud, false statements, violations of the law. They normally begin in the appropriate way in the relevant U.S. Attorney's Office. And that is the way that something like this, without commenting on this in particular, because I don't know the facts.
But in this instance, the acting U.S. attorney is the mother-in-law of the senior official in the Cuomo administration that admitted to the cover-up. Will you at least commit to not having the investigation done by a person with a conflict of interest?
Of course. I don't know any of the facts, but I can guarantee you that somebody with a conflict of interest will not be the person running an investigation of any kind.
Thank you.
Since it has appeared, reappeared, and then appeared again, this question about the Durham special counsel. For the record, the President of the United States and the White House, when they reported their policy on the future of U.S. attorneys, made 2 exceptions, if I remember correctly. One was for the Delaware U.S. attorney, and the second one was in this situation with Durham. The administration is clearly committed publicly to allowing Durham to complete his investigation. I don't know that any additional comments are needed beyond that, though you've been asked many, many times that question.
Durbin, it's their time.
In terms of Attorney General Barr, we do remember that he wrote an unsolicited memo questioning the legitimacy of the Mueller investigation before he was under active consideration for the office of the Attorney General. I don't know why the other side keeps returning to this, but I think
because they just want him to answer the question.
With the White House position.
Secularis says, paying off violent brutes to not kill and steal, remembering Flavius Aetius paying off the Huns and Visigoths to not invade Gaul and sack Rome. Oh, I've seen this one before.
Thank you, Chairman, and I may be am I the final questioner? Could be.
So not Sheldon. God, we got to end on Sheldon Whitehouse.
Proceedings, Your Honor.
Sean McDonald says, just want to take a step back and realize that we have over 1,000 people taking time to actually care about what goes on in our government. Appreciate all you do into informing and making people care. Hey, thanks,
brother. When we
ask
you questions, or the department or the FBI questions, we're entitled to an answer. And if the answer is no, we can't tell you that, we're entitled to an explanation as to why you think that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, Senator.
Good. I touched on
Cory Booker says if you ignore 9/11, the majority of terrorism is committed by right-wing extremists.
Administration of executive privilege determinations. We had documents sent in here blank that had the phrase constitutional privilege stamped on them. No articulation of what constitutional privilege it was. We have had witnesses claim to assert executive privilege, but the administration never backed them up by actually asserting the privilege, so there was never actually a test of the proposition. But our chairman wouldn't force an answer, so we were stuck. And I urge you to maybe we should even have a hearing on it, think through what executive privilege ought to look like, what the process for declaring it ought to look like, and try to get that cleared up so that in this committee, we're no longer being treated the way we were in the last administration.
By the way, the first stream is
You
already
mentioned-
up on my
mentioned that
alternate
false
channel.
Statements were a way that cases kind of traditionally came in, went to the U.S. attorney first, worked their way up. There's one sort of strange anomaly, which is false statements to the IRS. The administration before this one took the view that a false statement to the IRS was something that they wouldn't look at unless it had been referred by the IRS. So I get the policy of not getting into criminal investigations of tax law without the IRS saying, hey, we'd like you to prosecute this. We are the tax law experts, and we really, we have some equities here, and we either want you or don't want you to proceed criminally in this matter. I get that. When it's a plain vanilla false statement, I did that as U.S. attorney. You did those cases.
You made false statements?
Anybody who served as a U.S. attorney has done those cases. I'd urge you to reconsider a policy of deferring to the IRS before proceeding on a simple false statement case. Obviously, it'll be fact-specific, but I flagged that for you.
Insaniac, I just made it public. It's there now.
And the last point I'd like to
If you
make
check again.
is that it seems to me, and I'll ask you to agree or disagree with the statement, it seems to me that failing to proceed where an investigation or a prosecution is warranted, and doing so on political grounds, is just as bad as proceeding with an investigation or prosecution on political grounds. Would you agree that that's a
Yes.
correct proposition?
Of course, absolutely.
Last of all, we all need something to believe in, I think.
What, are you
People who
quoting pop music
worked in
now?
the department very much believe in the Department of Justice. They believe in the merits and the norms and the values and the traditions of their service and of the department. People across this country need to believe. And there was a lot that happened in the last administration to cause doubt about whether the Department of Justice met that standard. They were worthy of the public's trust and belief.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me ask you as your closing comments to respond.
Everybody believed everything
to
until
how
Trump
you
came
view
along.
the
Now
importance
they
of the
don't.
public's trust and belief in the Department of Justice and your commitment to salvaging if necessary, restoring as needed, and upholding those ideals.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more. It's not just that the department has to do justice, that it has to appear to do justice, and that the people of the United States has to believe that it does justice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people lose their faith in the rule of law. They take the law into their own hands. They become cynical about law enforcement, about public servants. I would like, for the time that I'm in the Justice Department, to turn down the volume on the way in which people view the department, that the Justice Department not be the center of partisan disagreement, that we return to the days when the department does its law enforcement and criminal justice policy, and that this is viewed in a bipartisan way, which for a long time in the history of the department, that's the way it was. I know that these are divisive times. I'm not naive, but I would like to do everything I can to have people believe
I'm not naive.
that's what we're doing. People will disagree. People on the left side, the right side, the Democratic side, the Republican side will disagree with things that I do, and that has happened as a judge. The only thing I can hope is that people will understand that I am doing what I do because I believe it's the right thing and not out of some improper motive. That's the best I can ask. And if you confirm me, and if at the end of my time people still believe that, I will consider that a singular accomplishment.
Godspeed to you, sir.
Judge Garland, I'm going to say a few words about what the committee's going to do tomorrow in pursuit of your nomination, and then a few closing comments. Tomorrow,
All right, we're almost done.
The hearing begins at 10 a.m. We'll hear from a panel of outside witnesses. Reminder that questions for record from the senators on the committee must be submitted by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 24th. I hope people will show good faith and common sense in the number of questions that they submit, because you have been open.
I'm
now
probably
for 2
not
full
going to
rounds
stream
ask whatever
tomorrow's,
people have had on their
by the
minds.
way.
Let me say a few words in closing. My appreciation of your background is a little different.
I think
than
it'll be
some.
just really terribly
I know
boring.
One of your earliest inspirations
But maybe.
was a man
We'll see.
named Abner Mikva, who proceeded to serve with distinction all 3 levels of government in the federal branch, as well as his initial service in the Illinois House of Representatives. One of his closest friends and allies and colleagues over the years was a man named Paul Simon, who picked me up and dusted me off a few times when I lost elections and said, "You'll get him next time." He was right.
Paul
I eventually
Simon,
did,
not that
but
Paul Simon.
Took a while.
Simon and Garfunkel,
I
Paul
knew
Simon?
Abner Mikva personally and through his relationship with my mentor, Paul Simon. They represented the very best in public service. Integrity, honesty, hard work, all of the above, time and again. We are lucky to be heirs of that legacy.
Errors?
And I think that is inspired.
He meant heirs,
both of
but he
us
said
in our
errors.
different pursuits of public service.
The truth comes out.
When President-elect Biden told me that you were under consideration for this job, I thought instantly, this is the right person. At this moment in history, this is the right person to put in
this
as
is him.
Attorney General.
That's right.
The Department of Justice needs
Has
to have
nothing
its
to
morale
do with
restored.
what happened in
It needs to have its reputation restored.
in
It needs leadership that
2016
is
when he didn't
honest
get to be judge.
and
Nothing to
we
do with
can
that.
Respect from every corner of this country.
It's not a
You are that
literal
person.
fuck you
Your testimony today
that he's
is
not a
evidence
Supreme
of
Court justice. That's
I
not
want
it.
to thank your family
It's something
in
else.
particular. I don't know that they have, you mentioned it, but it's well worth repeating.
Mr.
Lynn,
Nemesis
thank
says-
you for being here. Rebecca and her husband, Alexander, that would be Becky and Zan. And Jessica, Jesse, thank you for being here today in support.
Doxed all his family right there on
extraordinary
national
person
television.
Who is ready to serve again and is being called by the president to be there at a moment in history when he's needed the most. This
Mithrin
president
Emmer
has put
says,
faith in you, Judge Garland.
"Hold up."
We will do the same. Thank you again. I look forward to your swift confirmation.
What? Okay, they're buffering. Mithrin Emmer says, "Hold up. Proceeding with an investigation on purely political grounds is bad. Dude seriously makes that statement after he voted to convict on the impeachment and then brings up those purely political grounds. Hypocrite." Yes. Looks like YouTube got yeeted there. They ended the video, or not YouTube, the Senate Judiciary video feed got yeeted. Maybe they had a copyright strike or whatever. I think it's just their tech, though. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but their tech is very, very bad. I think they literally just ended it early. Yep. They ended it early. Here's the replay. Good job, guys. Right in the middle of his speech. That's great. Lil Poo Poo says, "Shame on YouTube for canceling this beautiful Christian streamer midstream. He doesn't say it, he swears. He's just saying his prayers." That's right. Frederick Little says, "Nick, do one shot for every you've heard in the hearing today." Kidding, of course. There's not enough liquor in a liquor store for that. Bad Vibe says, "Merrick was a litigator. Guy can't walk and chew gum at the same time." Yes, he was apparently a litigator. Well, he was a prosecutor. There are good prosecutors out there, but let me just say that prosecution is lawyering on easy mode. You have the full power of the state behind everything that you do. You have all the resources in the world. You have deferential treatment from judges, from cops, from witnesses, from everybody. So let's not oversell litigators. They get breaks from half the rules. They don't have to do any of this stuff. Like there are prosecutors who are like, I didn't know cases could be dismissed before a trial. Anyway, let's not oversell them. Okay, so there's a couple chats left, and then we'll wrap up the stream. I will be on Adam Krigler's show. Kriegler. I don't know how to say his last name. Adamcast. I'll be on Adam's show today at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. I'll be on Adam's show live over there, so come check that out. There will still be Krigler. There will still be a live stream tonight on this channel, since I haven't been yeeted again yet. So, yes, and we will cover all sorts of topics of the day, the normal style show tonight. So come check that out. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll probably be screaming about getting yeeted midstream. Hopefully I have an update at that point. CH says, Nick, your streams have opened my eyes to how inept and corrupt large sections of our government is. How am I supposed to have any hope in the future? How much longer do we have before this back and forth Dem rep cycle irrefutably harms the country? CH, the only encouragement I can give you on that is that it's been this way forever. This isn't new. So we've muddled through this mess. Our founders were very smart, and they built a very resilient system. And occasionally there are resets and hiccups, but largely it trundles along. Because the core foundations of the system are freedom and liberty. And as long as those core concepts remain, and they remain in the hearts of people, then we'll get back. And if they don't remain in the hearts of people, which kind of looks like maybe they're not, but I have there's a fallacy, an informal fallacy called presentism, which is the willingness to believe that the present time is somehow more significant than any other time, roughly. And that informal fallacy is something we need to remember. And you hear it every time. This is the most important election in history, most important thing in history. Today is the most important day in history. Everything's the most important. It's always the most important, but it's not, though. It's not always the most important. It's not always the most we've been divided. It's not always the worst. It may be. Fallacies don't mean the statement is automatically wrong. It just means that the truth of the statement isn't proven by the statement itself. That there's a problem that you have to assess. So I'm always cautious. I'm always cautious when we get to these sorts of things. I don't know that now is particularly the worst time ever. But things aren't good. That doesn't mean that they're irredeemably bad. So hold on to that. And I will hold on to that, and we'll meet each other in the gulag as we are thrown in prison for the rest of our lives for wrong think. That's my encouragement to you. Bad Vibe says, just FYI, apparently Discovery is doing a documentary on Onision. WTF. Oh, God. Night of Hope says, have a friend who is a squishy centrist type who thinks that the Democrats won't scapegoat us and throw us into death camps. Listen to how these people want to turn us all into suspected terrorists and march us out of society. People need to pay attention. Malik Foxon says, why the hell would you appoint a guy that knows nothing about anything going on around him? WTF, am I missing something here? What you're missing is Merrick Garland was Obama's Supreme Court pick that didn't get to be heard for a Supreme Court seat because the Republicans didn't have the hearing to appoint him. They just held off. This is revenge for that. Legatus Rex says, when people sell phones so hard, it spans generations. And then he sent me a Jack Posobiec tweet. which I don't know what that tweet is. I hope 2022 brings in more decent runners and less fossilized establishment garbage. Let me see if I can see what that tweet is. What U.S. senator in history pointed menacingly at witness like this? Oh, okay. Hold on. Here we go. This is kind of funny. Can I pull this up? I can't. Wait. Just a second. Just a second. I'll get this pulled up for you. Here, I hope you can see this okay. So here's this guy, Michael Beschlaw says, what U.S. senator in history pointed menacingly at witnesses like this? This is Jack Posobiec saying, why are they like this? And then, of course, he's got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pointing at witnesses from the Senate. Of course, because of course. Holly wasn't pointing menacingly at Merrick Garland, by the way. That's a mischaracterization. Timothy Reaper says Darude Sandstorm. Oh, I can't think of the tune to that, but Malik Fox, it says, bruv, if you have to say out loud that you aren't naive, you need to fucking reevaluate. You haven't shown me a distinct lack of naivety with your lack of experience with all the half crap you're supposed to be dealing with. Who are you talking about, Malik, in that one? I don't know who that's directed at. I assume it's not at me, but if it is, that's fair. Night of Hope says, I don't know, my generation seems not to have any of our values. In the 60s, there was a large normal majority. People were still getting married, going to church, and talking about civil rights, etc. And everyone seems to want their version of authoritarianism. Yes. Yes. I can take my headphones off. You're true. Hey, what's up, Ty Beard? Tyronius Beardicus? How you doing, brother? All right, guys, that's the show for tonight. Like I said, I'll be on Adamcast at 5:30, and then I will be 5:30 Central Time, and then I will be doing this show at 11 o'clock Central Time. And the guy in the seat, yeah. I will see you guys there. I hope you'll come show Adamcast some love. And then I hope you'll come back to my stream tonight. I know it's a lot of streams from me, and so if you're not able to make it because you're too nicked out, I get it. But I hope to see you guys tonight at the normal time. And we'll see you then. I will keep you posted on whatever I find out from YouTube as far as my channel warning strike goes. My warning strike, which, like I said, I've already appealed. My YouTube partner manager has already been notified, and I'm just waiting on response from them as well as from YouTube itself. I assume this misunderstanding will be cleared up hastily. But until that time, I guess I could go ahead and play the outro. We'll get that going in just a second here. And then says, Sin7 Call says, video related question. Rockstar repeatedly take down fan projects of their games. What's the legality of that, and could modders defend themselves legally? It depends on the project and how they're accessing it and all of that stuff. And like what code they're using. It's very fact specific question, and I don't know. Like Merrick Garland, I don't know enough about the specific situation to really comment on it intelligently. So I'll go with the lawyer answer. It depends. It depends. All right, guys. Let's get this outro going. I will see you guys tonight. Have a good night, or have a good day. Talk to you soon. Peace. Peace.
Oh, he drinks a fair bit, but you realize that it just helps get his noggin jogging along. With his glass by his side and his kids asleep tight, we'll hear some lost-plaining tonight. With his microphone muted, we'll laugh at this boomer until he explains it's all part of the plan. Watch his face become redder as he becomes meta, raging at idiots from Twitterland. From the white shores of Maine to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, his lady is fair, and she handles herself with the grace of one who has borne many children. As the wife of a lawman, she makes sure that he has the time and the place to provide for them there. So pour out an Ardbeg, a Balmore, a Lafroig. The spirits flow as the ones who get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear lost-plaining tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have passed to make the law what we have now. Oh, the guests are all planet folks from Doug T to Drexel. They bring their perspective and spice to the mix. But the reason we're here and the one that we cheer is the one who is showcasing us his career. Get unemployed. So pour out a glass for the tea post on Twitter as we hear lost-plaining tonight. From the white shores of Nairn to the hills of Glenlivet, there's no one who explains the law better than Nick. So pour out a glass for the ones who have